Chapter 241, Chapter 240, A World of Pure White. He had only blinked once, and now Suho was standing here. He was used to this situation now. The moment Baran's horn appeared as a quest reward, the moment he held that horn in his hand, he had expected this to happen. Priest for the dead monarchs. Although there were exceptions, most of the dead monarchs Suho had met so far had bestowed upon him the role of a priest. What they wanted from Suho was one thing: a ritual to pass on their power to a suitable successor. They had chosen Suho to officiate that important event. But why? Why Suho? Why did they have no choice but to entrust the important role of a priest to the son of the Shadow Monarch, who killed them? Because there's no other option. The Dragon King Antares recently answered Suho's question. Unlike other monarchs, Antares had many opportunities to chat with Suho since he was always by his side. Now there's only you. I don't know how it happened, but... The Dragon King told Suho the story of the monarchs with a bitter expression. Originally, when a monarch dies, the succession ceremony for the next monarch takes place under the supervision of the priest of that race. But sometimes the power is passed on automatically, even without any assistance. That's the natural order. The one who decided that natural order was, of course, the now-deceased Absolute Being. In the beginning, the so-called primordial darkness was split to create 8 kings, who were the monarchs. So when we die, the primordial darkness we hold naturally seeks out the next successor and passes on. But now the Absolute Being was dead in this universe. It seemed like the laws he created were also broken. It's so broken that even a nobody like you can reawaken the souls of us who have returned to nothingness. How dare you say such blasphemy? Although Beru was outraged by the words, the Dragon King wasn't trying to belittle Suho. Rather, he was curious. How did Suho come to possess such an ability? The Dragon King continued his explanation, enduring Beru's anger. Of course, your father is one of the 8 fragments of brilliance, the 8 primordial lights created by the Absolute Being, and also the 9th monarch, a shadow that embodies both light and darkness at the same time. That's your father. But even the Shadow Monarch couldn't control the spiritual bodies of the monarchs, who were his equals. If that were possible, the monarchs would have already been reduced to shadow soldiers. Knowing this fact, the Dragon King was extremely wary of the power Suho possessed. It would be good to be careful of that unknown skill. No matter how I look at it, that power doesn't seem to be something your father passed on to you. The Dragon King repeatedly warned that it was even more dangerous because it was a passive skill that activated automatically. Suho heeded his advice, but it was no use, no matter how much he prepared. It was a skill he didn't even know the name of. Knowing this fact as well, the Dragon King emphasized one last thing to Suho. Remember one thing. Not all monarchs will be friendly to you, just like I was, especially the Demon King Baran. The King of Demons, the Monarch of White Flames, Baran, is watching you. So you're Baran. He looked up at the edge of the pure white land. There stood a demon clad in luxurious armor that only royalty would wear. A demon with a bluish tinge. The light of blatant hatred flickered in his wide-open eyes. Suho was used to this situation as well. Come to think of it, it was the same when he met the Queen of Insects, Quaresha, as well as the Dragon King. It wasn't something he couldn't understand. Revenge against his father. It was only natural, wasn't it? If they didn't have the desire to pass on their power to a successor like the Dragon King, it was perfectly fine to express their revenge towards the son of the one who killed them. But Suho already knew the story of Baran from the Dragon King. Strictly speaking, Baran wasn't killed by his father, Sung Jinwoo. The one who killed him was the previous Shadow Monarch, Ashbourne. First of all, the Baran that Sung Jinwoo killed in the Demon Castle when he was young wasn't the real one, but a replica, and the real Demon King Baran was a monarch who betrayed Ashbourne a very long time ago and was executed by him. This meant that Baran here had never even met Sung Jinwoo. But the fact that he's showing this much hatred means... Suho gritted his teeth. Rumble. Crackle. Lightning struck the Baran's sky. This was Baran's expression of anger and hatred. Crackle. Rumble. Crash. The thunderbolts striking down from the sky were rapidly expanding their range around Baran, as if to fill this entire world of pure white. Suho had seen this kind of sight only once before. It was performed by none other than his mother when Chahain held the Demon King's longsword and killed Itarim's apostle. But the energy of the lightning emanating from Baran's body was far more terrifying than back then. And at the center of that natural disaster, Baran was glaring at Suho with bloodshot eyes, especially towards Suho's chest, to gauge the identity of the power hidden within. The King of Demons, the monarch of white flames, discovers the Dragon King's heart within you. Damn it. So it had come to this. Suho let out a small sigh and inwardly cursed the Dragon King. Lowly human, I'll ask you one thing. Baran finally spoke. But this wasn't a question he asked because he wanted an answer. Are you a descendant of Ashbourne or a descendant of Antares? He was already certain. Why do I sense both of their powers within you? Didn't you say you would only ask one question? And if you look closely, you'll also feel the blessings of other monarchs. You talk too much. Actually, Suho knew that this conversation was a waste of time. The King of Demons, the monarch of white flames, realizes that you are the successor of the Dragon King Antares. The King of Demons, the monarch of white flames, recalls the atrocities of Antares. The system messages were kindly informing Suho of Baran's inner thoughts one by one. The King of Demons, the monarch of white flames, remembers that it was the King of Dragons, the monarch of destruction, Antares, who instigated him to betray Ashbourne. There were two targets of revenge for the Demon King Baran, the Shadow Monarch Ashbourne and the Dragon King Antares, and Suho happened to inherit the powers of both of them. Therefore, instead of answering, Suho raised his magic power to the maximum. He couldn't summon shadow soldiers in this world, so he had to fight Baran alone. Whoosh! The Dragon King's heart boiled. Suho's entire body was engulfed in black flames resembling the Dragon King. That sight was the perfect answer for Bara. His eyes widened. As I thought, you bastard! Flash! He turned into a bolt of lightning and shot towards Suho. The King of Demons, the monarch of white flames, uses skill. White flames. What the? There was no time to be surprised. Crash, a speed he couldn't react to, even though he was prepared. Suho's body was thrown in the opposite direction by the flash of light that stretched in a straight line. This was only the beginning. Baran, who charged at Suho, opened his mouth wide, and shark-like vicious teeth tried to swallow Suho's head whole. Crack! He barely managed to avoid the attack, but he had to give up his shoulder instead. It hadn't even been a second. In that short time, Suho was hit and bitten on the shoulder. Crackle! Kug! His vision flickered. Tremendous lightning pierced Suho's body through his shoulder. He felt like he was going to lose his mind from the pain of literally being struck by a thunderbolt. Die, die, die! Crack, crack, crack! Baran bit Suho mercilessly like a true demon, as if to chew and swallow his flesh and bones. Kya! Suho gritted his teeth, enduring all the pain, and attempted to counterattack. Using skill, tenacity, giant's armor. In skill storm of black flames, rumble, he confronted Baran using all his skills, but the Demon King didn't even try to avoid any of the attacks and took them all head-on. And he grinned. Kehei! Good, good! You are deciduous! Suho's eyes widened at that insane sight. It wasn't that he didn't feel pain. Baran felt joy precisely because he felt pain. A demon's life is a struggle. That's right. He was the one who reached the pinnacle. And demons were a race that found the value of life in cruel struggles with blood and flesh splattering. Especially Baran. He was a true predator who devoured more demons than anyone else. Crackle, crash, bang. Suho and Baran's fierce clash dyed the world of pure white with madness. The white flames flashing from Baran's mouth intensified. Suho also expanded his senses to the maximum and launched a fierce attack. This isn't easy. He realized how much his father's illusion had helped him during his battle with the Dragon King. He knew it wouldn't be an easy fight from the beginning, but the reality was even harsher. After countless exchanges, Baran chewed and swallowed Suho's flesh, and as if realizing something, he looked at him with a wide smile. Ka-ha! Now I understand. Why a lowly human like you has become so strong. He finally realized the foundation of the power engraved in Suho's body. This is the taste of magic used by the demonic spirits. Did a shaman of the magic world imitate our demon race's growth method in a human body? I thought I felt someone ripping off my spiritual body. The king of demons, the monarch of white flames, realizes the principle behind the creation of the level-up system. What? This time, even Suho couldn't help but be surprised. He had been wondering why the system messages were unusually chatty today. Could the material of that system be? Kehe. There's only one guy in the magic world who would research such sorcery, the great spellcaster Kandiaru. He was always desperate to surpass Yogumunt and become the monarch of transfiguration. Baran couldn't help but discern a lot of information through his battle with Suho. Strangely, there was an unknown wound on his spiritual body from the moment he woke up in the world of nothingness, as if someone had forcibly ripped off a part of his soul. But only after directly tasting Suho's blood and flesh did he become certain. The only one who would want to research the spiritual body of a dead monarch to this extent was Kandiaru, the eternal second-in-command of the magic world. Yes, it's certainly possible with that guy's magic. But how greedy can he be, to not only rip off my spiritual body and create a replica of me, but to completely apply the demon race's growth method to a lowly human? Baran was truly dumbfounded as he realized the hidden truth. Yogumunt, the monarch transfiguration, the great spellcaster Kandiaru, who was always aiming for Yogumunt's position right under him, he had tried everything to grow his own rank, even when the tide of the war was turning. And the result is you? Baran looked at Suho with renewed interest. More precisely, at the demon race's growth method, the level-up system engraved within him. No, not demon races. The growth system of the residents of the Gap, who killed living beings, absorbed the nutrients of their souls and grew infinitely. Smirk. Realizing this fact, Baran licked his lips ominously as he looked at Suho. I'm curious, what would happen if I devoured the nutrients you've consumed so far? Crackle. Electricity flowed through his saliva-covered teeth. Chapter 242. Chapter 241. Was it because he chewed and swallowed Suho's flesh and blood? Baran was suddenly recalling a very old memory that had been forgotten deep within him. Did you know? That memory was from a time long before he became the king of demons, even before he was a demon, an incredibly old recollection. I was once a resident of the Gap. There was a time when he too was one of the scraps discarded by the absolute being, as all demons were. As he muttered those words, Baran's gaze suddenly lifted and reached the vast sky. Crackle! Crash! A blue storm raged across the pure white sky. At its center, Baran continued to speak as if he didn't care whether Suho was listening or not, recalling the memory of that time. Did you know? The residents of the Gap have no soul. Therefore, they cannot be killed. They were never born in the first place, so they are not even allowed to die. Therefore, if you want to kill us, just tear, burn, and destroy us. Yes, that was all they were, the scraps of the universe that weren't allowed life or death. That was what the residents of the Gap were. That was his true form before he became a demon. That's why Baran was realizing his situation anew. So, maybe I've returned to that time again? The spiritual body of a monarch who died and returned to nothingness. The contaminated spiritual body of the demon king that even the world tree wouldn't accept. What was the difference between this and when he was a resident of the Gap? So, Baran's gaze lowered again, and he looked at Suho. Crackle! Snap! Blue sparks flickered fiercely in his eyes. Terrible hunger. That intense and pure desire captured Suho's form in an instant. Maybe even I, if I absorb enough nutrients, can be reborn as a Gap demon once again? Gulp. I can't hold back my drooling. Blatant gluttony. His smile as he looked at Suho became ecstatic. His mind had already completely returned to the time when he was a resident of the Gap. Baran declared, Therefore, from now on, you are my nutrient. I will personally chew and swallow you, and I will finally become you. Gulp at that moment. Suho's flesh and blood that Baran swallowed were finally digested within him. And then something strange happened. Ding! The king of demons, the monarch of white flames, uses skill doppelganger. This is crazy. Suho couldn't help but let out a groan. Baran's smile towards Suho became grotesquely distorted, and his face began to change little by little. But his appearance was becoming more and more like Suho. Crackle! A thunderbolt struck behind Baran, who, clad in splendid full-body armor, was still smiling brightly. With half of his face transformed into Suho's, I earnestly wish and desire. He reaffirmed his craving as if chewing on it. I will become you. It was chilling. Baron's voice had also changed to sound like Suho's. Crash! Baron's new form once again turned into a bolt of lightning and charged towards Suho. Crack! His shark-like teeth mercilessly attacked Suho, like a predator hunting its prey. No, with the momentum of one devouring prey that had already been captured, he simply opened his mouth wide and bit and tore. Crack! Crack! But Suho's response was completely different than before. Unlike the first time, he could now see Baron's attacks with his eyes, and dodge them by a hair's breadth. Gak! Gak! A monstrous roar erupted from the open mouth, and blue flashes rained down like a shower. Flash! 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 Baron flinched at the unwavering reaction speed despite the concentrated attacks. Why? Are you surprised? Suho could sense his agitation. He smirked. Did you think I was just taking hits all this time? Certainly, the damage he had taken so far was significant, but Suho didn't gain the Dragon King's heart just by overcoming the trial. The moment he first faced the Dragon King and barely endured that overwhelming power. I have the compliment, no, the title that my father gave me. Title, Overcomer of Adverse. A title given to those who have overcome adversity splendidly. Stats increase in proportion to lost health. 1% stat increase per 1% lost health. A buff that increased his stats as his health decreased, and it boosted all his stats. Beru always said that the more you suffer, the more you grow. I'm confident in my durability. So if you want to devour me, go right ahead, try it. Let's see who becomes the prey. I'll face you with all my might from now on. Crash! Crash, crash, crackle. A tremendous storm raged, centered on Suho and Baron. Struggling is useless. As his prey struggled, Baron raised his hand with an even more frantic expression. You are already within my domain. Crackle. That's right, this was Baron's realm. If he wished, he could cover this entire space with his energy, just like all the other monarchs. Flash. The moment his hand pointed at Suho, dozens of lightning bolts struck his body. Crackle! Got you! Baron had an ecstatic expression. It was a terrifying thunderbolt with terrible destructive power and even a stun effect. But is that all? Suho was fine, resisting abnormal status with the effect of buff, immunity. Resisting abnormal status with the effect of buff. Resist status effect of buff. Baron's expression crumpled. Kandiaru, you bastard! You even put this kind of petty trick in place? Blessing. Blessing of the great spellcaster Kanu. Continuous effect, health and longevity. Immune to all diseases, toxins, and abnormal status effects. Regeneration ability increases exponentially during sleep. The stun effect of the lightning was completely blocked by the status immunity buff. But Baron knew Kandiaru's petty tricks well. But it won't block the pain. The damage definitely worked. Even though he boasted tremendous durability, if pushed continuously, Suho would eventually reach his limit. The fact that someone who was a resident of the Gap became the Demon King meant that Baran was that tenacious and grey. He didn't know the meaning of giving up. I'll sink my fangs into you and suck your blood like before. Crackle. This time, all the lightning bolts struck Baron's body instead of Suho. With the power of all that lightning, his attack reached an even greater speed. At that moment, Suho saw the terribly pure desire deeply engraved in Baran's eyes. Yes, I admit it, and he truly reflected. I underestimated the monarchs because I leveled up a bit. Suho had obtained the Dragon King's qualification and even defeated Itarim's apostle alone. He had well-founded confidence. But that alone wasn't enough to fight a monarch. Come to think of it, the only monarch Suho properly fought and defeated was Queratia. He only overcame the Dragon King with the help of his father's illusion. Wasn't that just luck? And the rest of the monarchs were all reasonable and open to conversation due to their own circumstances. Maybe Queratia was the weakest among the monarchs. Well, she was a collective of insects. The Queen of Insects, the Plague Monarch, clenches her fists with a surge of emotions. Suho acknowledged his arrogance. I still have a long way to go. I thought I could fight him head-on at my current level. Having seen Baron's eyes, he realized that it was disrespectful to just rely on his level and attack. I'm sorry, I was rude. From now on, I won't be picky about the means or methods. That moment, Suho's eyes changed. So please understand if I'm a bit of a mixed bag from now on. Baron chuckled at the gazes he suddenly felt from all directions. The King of Beasts, the Fang Monarch, is watching Baron. The queen of insects, the plague monarch, is watching Baron. The king of the snowfolk, the monarch of frost, is watching Baron. The king of dragons, the monarch of destruction, is watching Baron. Ha, you managed to persuade the other monarchs. So what changes? This is my domain anyway, even if other dead guys intervene. Before he could even finish his word, Ding, the spirit of Pet, Gray, possesses the priest's body. A sacred wind blew from somewhere and swirled around Suho's entire body. Whoosh! His hair turned white and fluttered in the strong wind. Using skill Grassland's Wind, movement speed temporarily increases by 30%. Attack speed temporarily increases by 30%. Snap! Suho finally caught up with Baron's speed properly, but Baron still mocked him. The Fang Monarch's blessing? Even if you've become this much faster, nothing will change. It will, using skill Blizzard of Frost. Whoosh! A sudden cold wave poured onto Baron's body. The king of the snowfolk, the monarch of frost. Sillad, you bastard! Baron erupted in anger on the frozen snowfield. Crack! By the time he broke the ice and escaped, Suho's blade had already reached his neck. Gotcha, you bastard! Slash! 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 Two swords slashed at Baron, who hurriedly raised his arms to block. But that wasn't all. He realized that all the attacks pouring onto him were laced with deadly poison. This power, using debuff Paralysis Poison, using debuff Kasaka's Venom. The queen of insects, the plague monarch, scoffs at Baron. Suho smirked. That's why I said it from the beginning. I'm a bit of a mixed bag. So what if I'm cowardly? I'm desperate too, just like you. Just as Baron was desperate to live, Suho also had a goal he must accomplish. To save my grandfather and go help my father, I can't fall to the likes of you. But that was the same for Baron. The desire to live, that primal instinct, was the driving force that moved him, who was once a resident of the Gap. In pain and screaming, Baron opened his mouth wide, eyes filled with venom. Crash! Suho's eyes widened. Baron's teeth bit into his blade. Vulcan's horns, which were slashing at him, shattered. And at that moment, Baron realized a surprising fact. This is a demon's horn. There were an awful lot of demon souls devoured within Vulcan's horns, and Baron was still the king of all those demons. Sealed souls, gather before me. Demon King Baron uses skill, Hell's Army. Hell's Army. It was the power to gather the demon army to the Demon King's location. Shatter! Whoosh! At that moment, countless demon souls began to spring up from the shattered blades of Vulcan's horns. They were all already dead, but this world also happened to be a realm of the dead. Demon soul is summoned. Demon soul is summoned. Demon soul is summoned. Demon soul is summoned. Countless demon souls gathered before Baron, all in the same form as when they were alive. Kehe. Thank you. Now the real war begins. Baron smiled. Oh dear. Suho's eyes deepened at that sight. He had suddenly lost his weapon and even provided Baron with an army. But in this moment, he also realized something. Now I understand. Suho smirked as he looked at Baron's army. Baron, you said you double-crossed the Shadow Monarch Ashborn before? Even if the Dragon King instigated you, I now understand why you betrayed him so readily. Come to think of it, it didn't make sense. Even though the contaminated demon souls were the only counter to the Shadow Army, the difference in power would have been clear. Yet Baron willingly betrayed Ashborn. Suho finally realized the reason. Was it an inferiority complex? What? Baron's eyebrows twitched at those words. Now that I see it, the power the King of Demons possesses is clearly a lower-grade version of the Shadow Monarch's ability, a poor copy of the Shadow Army. Shut your mouth. Baron yelled at Suho's chilling words and attacked him with the demon army, but Suho wasn't afraid. Thank you. Now there's really no way for me to lose. Suho revealed his power, using skill, Monarch's Domain. Whoosh! Suho's shadow expanded its domain. Of course, summoning shadow soldiers within this place was impossible, but there was something else he could do. He was the successor of the Monarch of Destruction. Burn, Flames of Destruction. Whoosh! Chapter 243, Chapter 242 Rumble. The pure white ground began to boil like lava under Suho's black shadow. Kah! The sight of demons writhing in pain and melting like wax in the crimson inferno was truly hell. Crackle! Crash! Above their heads, the blue storm created by their king still rained down thunderbolts, but even Baron, their king, couldn't help them. What the... Baron was also in shock at the sudden situation unfolding before his eyes. This is absurd. His eyes shook violently. It was truly ridiculous. The crimson ground turned into lava, the sky with a blue storm raging. Seeing the demon souls dying helplessly between them, Baron couldn't help but be astonished. How can a mere human wield such destructive power? He had a hunch based on the energy he felt that Suho might be a descendant of Antares. But even if he was a descendant who inherited the power of a monarch, Baron didn't care. No, it was rather good news. The weakened ultimate soul had walked in on its own. But an incomprehensible situation occurred. A mere descendant of a monarch. It was absurd that he could fight on par with him, a true monarch. Moreover, this world is solely for me. The anger he spewed echoed resoundingly from the depths of hell. The king of dragons, the monarch of destruction, grins with a ferocious glint in his eyes. The Dragon King couldn't help but laugh in satisfaction. No matter they all were defeated and died in the war, there was a clear hierarchy among the dead monarchs, and excluding the irregular shadow monarch, he, the monarch of destruction, was the apex. He was the leader of the monarchs. So shouldn't his successor, who inherited his heart, show this level of performance to save face as the monarch of destruction? Even as this was happening, numerous demon souls were screaming and melting from the destructive mana emanating from the Dragon King's heart. Ah! Beru quickly came to his senses and shouted at the soldiers again. What are you doing? Endure and persevere. You are already dead souls. What are you so afraid of that you stop your advance? Those words were actually true. The demons whose bodies were melting in the hellfire barely regained their senses. The pain was still terrible, and their whole bodies were burning, but they couldn't disobey the king's order. Kill him! The demon souls, engulfed in flames and turned into even more horrifying figures, rushed towards Suho, screaming, like a horde of zombies. But in the midst of that madness, Suho was still leisurely smiling, with hands behind his back, because the victor had already been decided. He looked straight at Baron, who was across from the demons, and said, "Yes, you're right, you can't kill a dead soul again. But you know what?" Baron suddenly felt a sense of foreboding. Suho's eyes were gleaming intensely. "I am the son of my father before I am the descendant of the Dragon King." Just then, Suho's gaze fell upon the demon souls that had reached right in front of him. Extraction is impossible due to mana contamination. Extractable target. Extractable target. Extractable target. The demon souls engulfed in flames were rapidly being purified by the power of destruction one by one. Suho, who was watching the scene, finally extended his hand, which had been behind his back, slowly forward. And, listen carefully. My name is Sung Suho. I am the son of Sung Jinwoo, the Shadow Monarch, the king who rules over death. Therefore, arise. Using his father's name, he simply gave the order, and then a miracle happened. Whoosh! Shadow extraction successful. Shadow extraction successful. Shadow extraction successful. Suho's shadow swallowed the demon souls that were engulfed in the flames of destruction whole, and then they began to be reborn on the spot. Shadow Demon Soldier Knight, Love 1. Shadow Demon General, Love 1. Crackle, crackle, crackle. The demons, emitting black steam, stopped attacking Suho and instead knelt before him, like knights serving a new liege. No, how can this be? There was nothing the Demon King Baron could do. All he was capable of was despair and rage. Even during the war between the rulers and monarchs, this had never happened. The demons were a superior race that couldn't be taken away by the Shadow Monarch. But with the appearance of a being who possessed both the power of destruction and shadow, such an absurd result occurred. No, this can't be happening. Why can't it? Suho smirked and beckoned his finger towards the shadow demons waiting for his orders. All forces, charge. Following Suho's finger, the shadow demons simultaneously turned their heads glaring at Baron. Then they rushed, as if to devour him like true demons. Crave! Baron completely lost his mind at that sight. Who dares rebel against the king? In the end, Baron, enraged to the limit, reached out and grabbed the demons that attacked him first. Crunch! Baron's teeth swallowed the demon soul whole, and after gulping it down, he spread his hand to find the demons that hadn't been purified yet. Come to me, all of you. Become one with me. Demon King Baron uses skill Blood Crystal. Blood Crystal, an ability superior to the Bloodstone, the unique ability of demon nobles. That power sucked in the souls of the demons that hadn't been purified by the power of destruction into Baron's body. Then he began to grow larger, and his huge fist struck down towards Suho. Crash! But oh, you desire a contest of strength? Suho didn't dodge. It was a contest of strength that he wanted. Are you sure about this? Suho, who easily withstood Baron's giant fist with just his strength, glared. Kya! How dare a mere human! Crash, bang, bang, bang. The enlarged Baron went berserk and began to launch a fierce attack. Demon King Baron uses skill Blood Crystal. Demon Baron uses skill Blood Crystal. Even as this was happening, Baron continued to grow larger, absorbing the demon souls. But Suho fought him head-on without retreating a single step. Of course, he wasn't alone. Kya! You insignificant insects! Attacks from the shadow demons poured in from all directions towards the enlarged Baron. A bloody battle where neither side yielded an inch. And there was a being who was most delighted by that sight, the Dragon King Antares. The King of Dragons, the Monarch of Destruction, feels his blood boil as he watches the fierce battle. The King of Dragons, the Monarch of Destruction's hands are itching. At this moment, the Dragon King was recalling when he, who had died and returned to nothingness, first met Suho. The conversation he had with the Sung Jinwoo's illusion who stood before him. Antares. Sung Jinwoo made him an offer. I know that my son's vessel is far too lacking to inherit your power. He's not even a dragon. So I have a proposal. Proposal? Antares frowned immediately at that time. But thinking back, Sung Jinwoo was the one who knew his personality better than anyone in this universe. Who was he? The great King of Dragons, the Monarch of Destruction, a terrible battle maniac who only felt the thrill of life in bloody battles. The true embodiment of destruction. That was Antares, a clear identity he defined for himself. That's why Sung Jinwoo was certain, you must be bored after dying, don't you want to run wild outside? That he would never refuse this attractive offer. Ding! Ragnar is summoned. The spirit of Antares possesses the priest's body. In the end, the Dragon King descended into the Demon King Baron's world. Ha! This is fun! Sung Jinwoo, it was a good decision to accept your offer. True destruction had come to this land, which had turned into hell due to Suho and Baron's battle. Gray, the descendant of the Fang monarch, could only do this because Suho allowed him to possess his body, but comparing the little wolf's level to the Dragon King's was a great insult to Antares. Moreover, he was the only one among the dead monarchs who obtained a new body and proudly escaped death. Of course, in the real world, he was struggling with mana deficiency, but that didn't apply here because Suho's mana was the Dragon King's mana. Sung Suho, my successor, with a wide grin. The Dragon King, so pleased with this world full of destruction, said to Suho, fiercely fighting Baron, I'll show you how to use the true power of destruction. Ding! Huh? At that moment, a quest window popped up before Suho's eyes. Job Change Quest, Dragon King's Trial 3. The Dragon King Antares wants to teach you how to wield the power of destruction. If you succeed in destroying the Demon King Baron's soul with the power of destruction, you will receive a great reward. However, if you fail, the Dragon King's heart will once again burn your body. Suho had a puzzled expression. He thought the trials were over after reaching level 100, but the third one suddenly began. What? There was another trial? Of course there was. Well, if the job change quest was over, my job title wouldn't still be empty. Suho quickly understood and shouted at the Dragon King, Okay, what do I have to do? Watch and learn. This is how you use my power. The Dragon King's eyes gleamed. Flare! At that moment, Ragnar's small body, which he was possessing, slowly floated into the air, and crimson flames swirled around him. His small mouth opened wide. The King of Dragons, the Monarch of Destruction, uses skill, Breath of Destruction. At that moment, Suho confirmed that a large portion of his mana was drained, and at the same time, the Breath of Destruction that erupted in a straight line from the Dragon King's mouth pierced a huge hole in Baron's side. Baron, half of his body charred black, flinched and retreated, belatedly realizing that the small dragon in the distance was the Dragon King Antares, whom he hated so much he erupted in fury. "Dragon King, you bastard! Thump, thump, thump!" Baron abandoned Suho and ran towards the Dragon King at terrifying speed to attack him. Even as he watched that intimidating form, Antares just smirked. "You dodged well. I was aiming for your heart." As expected, it was impossible to exert the same power as in his prime with Ragnar's body. But wasn't this rather good for educational purposes? Now try dodging this one too. The King of Dragons, the Monarch of Destruction, uses skill, Breath of Destruction. The Breath of Destruction once again erupted in a straight line from Ragnar's small mouth. But this time, Baron wasn't going to just take it. Baron's fist, barely dodging the Dragon King's attack, struck Ragnar's tiny body. Crash! The ground cracked and shattered from the tremendous attack. But the Dragon King was safe. Suho had the shadow demons quickly evacuate Ragnar, who had no defense compared to his attack power. Even though he almost died, Antares was just giggling incessantly, held in the arms of a shadow demon. He turned his gaze to Suho and asked, "Now, I've shown you twice. You can do it now, right?" His tone was light, but Suho knew that its meaning wasn't light at all. However, if you fail, the Dragon King's heart will once again burn your body. He had personally experienced how painful the after effects of failing the quest were. Why? Can't you do it? Then I'll be a little disappointed. No, it's enough. Suho was already moving. Don't get in my way. Dash! Baron swung his arm at Suho, who was blocking his way to the Dragon King. Jumping high, he ran across that giant arm and concentrated his power in one hand. I've roughly grasped the trick. Oh. Just like when he defeated Siddharth Bachchan in the Loktak field, but, after concentrating the power of destruction in one point, much more precisely and perfectly than back then. He opened his hand towards Baron's face, which was glaring at him. Skill, Breath of Destruction, has been learned. At that moment, Baron's eyes widened as he saw the mighty force of destruction flying towards him in a straight line. Using skill, Breath of... The soul of Baron, the King of Demons and Monarch of the White Flame, has been defeated, calculating experience points. It may take some time, as a large amount of experience points is being processed. Huh? Suho's eyes widened. Ding! 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 The mechanical sound continued endlessly. Suho could see countless system messages filling his vision. Chapter 244, Chapter 243, Thud. In the middle of the pure white land, Baron's massive, headless body collapsed. Flare. The Demon King's soul, his head completely blown off by the breath of destruction, was engulfed in crimson flames and began to boil. Whoosh! Steam, the Demon King's energy, rose from there in droplets and was sucked into Suho's body. The result was astonishing.
Level up, level up.
What is this? Suho couldn't help but be bewildered, a feast of tremendous level-ups that he had never experienced before. He could feel his strength increasing in real time, and it wasn't just his level that was rising. Ding, ding. Level of skill, Storm of Black Flames has increased. Level of skill, Giant's Armor has increased. Level of skill, Martial Arts has increased. Level of Tenacity has increased. Level of skill, Dual Wield has increased. It was truly amazing. Seeing Suho's impressed expression, the Dragon King smirked and replied, "What else would it be? Baron is experiencing what he tried to do to you in reverse. Baron tried to devour Suho and absorb all the high-quality nutrients contained in his soul. But in the end, it was Baron himself who was devoured. Baron was a soul that started as a resident of the Gap and became the Demon King. All the nutrients contained in that soul are now being absorbed by you. Originally, there was no way a mere human could absorb the power of a monarch created from the primordial darkness. However, the level-up system created by Candiaru was designed to allow a weak human to accept the power of death. There was no reason why the masterpiece, which could even accept the power of the Shadow Monarch, couldn't handle the power of the mere monarch of White Flames. Sk. A damn memory surfaced. If the level-up system didn't exist, the second Shadow Monarch, Sung Jinwoo, wouldn't have been born, and he wouldn't have suffered that humiliating defeat. Antares, suddenly recalling the memory of the day he was defeated by Sung Jinwoo, gritted his teeth as he looked at Suho's face, which greatly resembled his damn father's. All the monarchs died, and with the Shadow Monarch's victory, all wars ended. But, sigh, Well, it doesn't matter now. Antares soon chuckled. Yes, what did it matter? Since when did he care about other monarchs? He was Antares, the first monarch and the strongest monarch born from the primordial darkness. That meant he had experienced countless victories and defeats in the war against the rulers that had never ended since the beginning of time. Death? Defeat? What did they matter? The war will never end anyway. Because Antares was the first monarch, he was the one who fought most fiercely and for the longest time in the midst of that cruel and endless battlefield. That's why the most important thing to him wasn't the victory or defeat in the war. Even death wasn't something scary. There was only one thing he feared, not being able to fight again. Hellfire blazed in Antares' chuckling eyes. I don't care as long as I can fight again. That's right. He was the king who reigned over all dragons, a being who symbolized fear and destruction. He was simply frustrated that he could no longer go out and fight on the battlefield filled with blood and screams because he had died. But not anymore. Now that I have been resurrected like this, I can fight again. The Dragon King's lips curled up as he looked at Suho. So, is that damn level up over? Yes. Suho nodded, and Antares could see his status window. Level 122. Antares clicked his tongue with a dissatisfied expression. You've become quite strong, but you're still weak. You're insignificant compared to your father. Truly insignificant. Probably because he was a dead soul, even after absorbing the entire Demon King, he had only grown this much. It seems like it's because Candiaru ripped off Baron's spiritual body and created a replica to raise Yerwad, our father. Well, if it weren't for that, you wouldn't have been able to defeat Baron so easily. But this was only from his perspective. The Dragon King Antares was a rival who had competed with Sung Jinwoo for decades, so he knew Shadow Monarch's power better than anyone. That's why it was only natural that no matter how strong Suho became, it wouldn't satisfy him. Suho also knew this fact, so he could sense that there was a considerable amount of praise mixed in Antares' harsh criticism. He chuckled and asked him, "But I passed the trial, right?" "Well, a promise is a promise." Antares waved his hand as if he was reluctant. "Ding! You have met the completion conditions for Job Change Quest, Dragon King's Trial 3. A quest completion window popped up before Suho's eyes. Quest completion reward has arrived. Would you like to check the reward? YN. Check reward. Accept. Suho snatched the reward as if he had been waiting. And then something strange happened. Ding! Suddenly, Suho's inventory opened on its own, and the item, Javier's Soulstone, that was quietly placed inside popped out. Acquisition difficulty, type, a gem made by compressing a magic spirit. Ah, father? Suho's eyes widened. But despite his expectations, what happened last time didn't repeat itself. Just in case, put it in your inventory. Sung Jinwoo's illusion had placed various magical devices on the soul of the demonic spirit named Javier in preparation for when Suho met the Dragon King. And unlike the decisive battle with the Dragon King, this time it spat out something completely different instead of Sung Jinwoo's illusion. Flash, a tremendous energy erupted from the Soul Stone, swirling and compressing to a high density. What appeared were two daggers. This is... Suho was mesmerized and grabbed the weapons with both hands. His main weapons, item, Vulcan's horns, had been shattered by Baron. The fact that a new weapon appeared at the perfect timing felt like Sung Jinwoo's illusion had prepared it for this moment. But, Grit, this crazy bastard! The moment he confirmed the identity of the daggers that appeared before Suho, Antares couldn't help but explode in extreme irritation. Item Kamish's Wrath. Acquisition difficulty. Attack power +1 500. The sharpest fang among the dragon's teeth. Crafted into the finest dagger by the hands of a master craftsman. Its sharpness is unmatched, and its sensitivity to mana is also outstanding, which can make it much more powerful depending on the user's ability. However, the blade is currently dull due to numerous battles. A long description. The identity of that weapon was none other than Kamish's Wrath, which Sung Jinwoo used as his main weapon during his long battle with the Dragon King. Antares felt as if Sung Jinwoo's illusion was waving at him with a grin from somewhere far away in the universe. If it's Kamish, could it be Ragnar's? Grit! The Dragon King couldn't help but grind his teeth even more at Suho's gaze, which suddenly turned to him. "How far are you going to mock me, you damn bastard?" But regardless, Suho couldn't help but be astonished by the attack power of the item in his hand. Is this for real? This was crazy. 1e500, just the attack power? The base attack power was 1/500 without any modifiers. Unfortunately, it was reduced to plus 500 because the blade was quite dull. But still, this was amazing. Suho checked the information of the item, Vulcan's horns, he had been carrying. Although the blade was completely shattered by Baron, leaving only the hilt, he could still check the stats. Item, Vulcan's horns, acquisition difficulty, sword, attack power plus 40, Nunes 40, a sword made from the horns of the greedy demon Vulcan. Inflicts more damage with Vulcan's power imbued within. However, it is completely destroyed and cannot be used as a weapon. Effect Destruction Desire, increases physical damage by 300%. Effect Demon Devourer, Vulcan's power grows stronger as it devours demon souls. Gulp, it's embarrassing to even compare. Attack power 40. Even with the option that tripled the attack power, it was only 120, and even that was an effect that only increased physical damage. But Kamish's Wrath, even with a dull blade, had a base attack power of 500, so it was almost shameful to compare the two. Besides, it wasn't just the attack power that was outstanding. Excellent mana sensitivity, mana was magic power. To see what it meant to have excellent mana sensitivity, Suho immediately channeled his magic power into the dagger. And then, the dagger Kamish's Wrath trembled as if greeting its new owner, and at the same time, black-red aura began to blaze from the entire weapon, flowing from Suho's hand. Flare. It's Kamish's Fang. It's reacting to the Dragon King's heart. It wasn't just the aura that was changing. The weight of the dagger that had been filling his hand disappeared in an instant. Like magic. The dagger became lighter than a feather. Wow! A weapon which weight could be freely adjusted according to the user's will. Suho's heart pounded as he gripped the handle. Thump! Thump! He wanted to fight with this dagger. He wanted to wield this dagger. He didn't know if it was the dagger's will or his own, but according to that will, the system responded. Ding! Ding! Skill Dual Wield is upgraded to Skill Advanced Dagger Mastery. Learned Skill Vital Strike Point 1. Suho couldn't help but have a puzzled expression. The skill suddenly changed on its own, as if asking him to use daggers from now on. Suho couldn't help but chuckle, feeling as if he could hear his father's voice from somewhere. Daggers aren't really my style, but with a dagger like this, Antares gritted his teeth at that sight. That damn bastard. Chapter 245. Chapter 244. Whoosh! Frozen time began to flow again. Suho's mind returned to reality, to the middle of the dimensional gap where the shadow soldiers were sweeping away the gap demons, to the side of Sung Jinwoo, who was arguing with Harmacon. And at that moment, snap! Suho's eyes flashed, and he disappeared from the spot. And when he reappeared, he was in the middle of the remaining gap demons. Flare! In an instant, Kamish's Wrath emitted a black-red aura from his crossed hands. Advanced Dagger Mastery. Slash, 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 slash. The black-red energy filled his entire vision. The newly acquired skill expertly tore through the air. Crackle. And when Suho's feet, which were invisible to the eye, finally stopped, Gap Demon has been defeated. 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 All the demons along the path he passed were slaughtered on the spot without even being able to scream. The one whose eyes widened at that sight was none other than Beru. That is, Hunter Sung Suho, Sung Jinwoo, who was behind him, also looked at the daggers in Suho's hands with a shocked expression. Where did those weapons suddenly come from? From Sung Jinwoo's perspective, it was truly magic. It seemed to her that the demon horns suddenly appeared in Suho's hands and then instantly transformed into two daggers which exuded magic power at a glance. My liege, where did you get these precious items? Suho chuckled and replied to Beru's question. My father gave them to me. Father? Sung Jinwoo tilted her head. On the other hand, Beru's eyes glistened with a deeply moved expression. There was no way Beru wouldn't recognize Kamish's Wrath, which was once Sung Jinwoo's main weapon. My liege! Do you know what Kamish's Wrath is? These daggers, so to speak, are the weapons that Master used to defeat other monarchs. Beru began to passionately talk about his memories with Sung Jinwoo with a wistful expression. Kamish was a dragon that ranked at the top among magical beasts, excluding the monarchs. Kamish's wrath, made from the sharpest fang among his teeth, could cut the bodies of even monarchs. Except for one. But Kamish's wrath, which slit the necks of other monarchs, was useless against the Dragon King. It had difficulties piercing his hard scales, and even if it did, it only left a small scratch on his skin. Kamish's wrath couldn't inflict a fatal blow on the Dragon King. There was even a situation where one of them broke during the battle. But when Sung Jinwoo used the cup of reincarnation to turn back time, he sought out Kamish and created Kamish's wrath once again because there was no better weapon for everyday use. Oh, as expected of the explanation bug. Ahem, I apologize. I am indeed a bug that's good at explaining. As Suho gave him a thumbs up, Beru proudly puffed up his chest and continued his explanation. But after decades of war, the blades were damaged like this, especially when fighting the Dragon King for the second time. Nod. That's only natural. At Beru's words, a small lizard was nodding with its arms crossed. Antares had a very satisfied expression on his face. He clearly remembered the moment when Sung Jinwoo dared to attack him without knowing his place, and the blade broke. In the first place, it's impossible for a dagger made of a dragon's tooth to pierce this Dragon King's body. I am Antares, the strongest dragon, and that's why the king is currently using a dagger made of Antares' fang. What? Antares' jaw dropped at Beru's words, and his eyes widened as if they were about to pop out. His small, protruding fangs that were visible in his open mouth felt strangely sore. Of course, it must be his imagination. But the clueless ant Beru gave the Dragon King a thumbs up and praised him. I've made weapons with many dragon fangs, but yours were by far the best. Was this a compliment or an insult? Antares gritted his teeth with a very complicated feeling and growled lowly at Suho. Stop chatting and get on with the purpose of coming here. I should. Suho turned his head at those words. Sea of the Afterlife. The original purpose of coming to this dimensional gap with Seo Jiwoo was to find the way to the Sea of the Afterlife, wasn't it? I shall guide you. Beru guided Suho in the direction where the purified demon souls were headed. The dimensional gap was full of cracks. The unknown place called the dimensional gap was a space where those cracks changed in real time, constantly appearing and disappearing. In short, it wasn't easy to find a hole that directly connected to the Sea of the Afterlife, even if they knew the direction. That's why they needed bait. That was the role of Seo Jiwoo that the Dragon King suggested. While moving along the flow of the purified demon souls, Seo Jiwoo suddenly turned pale and collapsed on the spot. Suho turned to her in surprise. Hunter Seo Jiwoo, what's wrong? Gasp, I can't breathe. Something was strange. Extreme fear. Seo Jiwoo was overcome with worry that she would die if she went any further, to the point where she couldn't even breathe properly. Harmakan, find the cause. Suho immediately turned to Harmakan and gave the order. The fact that an S-rank hunter like Seo Jiwoo was suffering such mental damage meant that there might be guys like demonic spirit shamans hiding somewhere. But even after hearing Suho's order, Harmakan had a troubled expression. Master, I don't think this is someone's doing. I think this is... At those words, Beru quickly scanned the surroundings with narrowed eyes and said, My liege, I think we've come to the right place. Since a while ago, their surroundings were filled with numerous cracks like shattered glass. Among these cracks, surely, there will be the Sea of the Afterlife. Antares finished Beru's sentence and glanced at Seo Jiwoo, who was hyperventilating. The fear this human is currently feeling is an instinctive aversion that any living being would feel. In other words, it's a survival instinct. No matter how strong a human's magic power is, they're all equal in the face of death. What? Then what about me? You are not equal. Antares gritted his teeth with a rotten expression at Suho's reply. This was probably the first time since the dawn of history that the Dragon King, Antares, discussed the unfairness of bloodline. Unlike Seo Jiwoo, who looked like she was about to faint at any moment, Suho was completely fine. Anyway, you're saying we've come to the right place. Having grasped the situation, Suho immediately tried to have Seo Jiwoo retreat. But then, crack! Suddenly, above Seojiwoo's head, a crack appeared in the empty air and a giant bud popped out. Stretch! The grotesque bud that suddenly appeared split into 4 parts and opened its crocodile-like mouth wide towards Seojiwoo, who was crouching below. She couldn't scream, couldn't even breathe, and her face was filled with terror. This is it. She instinctively realized that this bizarre plant was the one that devoured her soul and dragged her to the sea of the afterlife, and that it was still drooling over her with lingering attachment. It's going to devour me again. The despair that came over Seojiwoo didn't become reality. Where do you think you're going? Slash. In an instant, Suho jumped up and cut off the stem of the thing that was about to swallow Seojiwoo whole in midair. A bizarre scream that scratched the eardrums erupted from the creature as it rolled on the ground. But as the Dragon King said, the weeds that grew in Sea of the Afterlife were tenacious. Especially this one, the Nightmare Bud, was disgustingly tenacious. Thud! 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 Rustle! Even as its head rolled on the ground with the cut-off, new stems, no, creepy roots grew rapidly from the severed end of the Nightmare Bud's stem. Flash! And using those roots, it rushed towards Seojiwoo, crawling on the ground like a centipede with many legs. Ruler's authority! Whoosh! At that moment, Kamish's wrath flew from Suho's hand in a straight line. Slash! 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 And this time, instead of the stem, it mercilessly slashed at the bud. Flare! Gah! In the end, the creature's petals, torn and tattered, burned. Nightmare Bud has been defeated. Ha! Seojiwoo finally felt like she could breathe again as she watched the creature turn to ashes and scatter before her eyes. An instinctive sense of relief washed over her as she saw the unknown being that had been constantly watching her disappear. Still sitting on the ground, she looked at Suho and asked with a weak smile, "Did I do a good job as bait? Thanks for your hard work." Suho politely bowed and thanked Seojiwoo. She shook her head. "No, it was something I asked for." Seojiwoo still felt indebted to her colleagues who were asleep with the eternal sleep disease. Even at this moment, her friends were slowly dying, and the fact that she alone woke up and reawakened as an S-rank hunter was incredibly remorseful and painful. But Seojiwoo's role ended here. Harmakan. Suho looked up, glared at the dimensional hole where the Nightmare Bud popped out, and ordered Harmakan, "Fix the coordinates." "Yes, master." Flash! Immediately, a magic circle was created in Harmakan's hands. The dimensional gap was highly volatile. Even if they found a passage connected to the Sea of the Afterlife like this, no one knew when the coordinates would suddenly distort and the connection would be cut off. But there was a being who could freely create passages connecting dimensions even in this volatile place. It was Yogamut King of demonic spirits and the monarch of transfiguration. But the ability itself wasn't something only Yogamut was allowed to do, just the level of skill differed. For example, the great spellcaster Kandiaru, who was the second in command of the magic world. Harmakan activates Instance Dungeon. The Instance Dungeon, Kandiaru's legacy, was a large-scale magic circle that created a reverse world. This ability was to create a world beyond the dimensional gap by distorting it, but with a little modification, it was also possible to use it to create a simple door instead of a reverse world. Rustle, chains woven with magic extended as Harmakan stretched out his hands. Those chains forcibly bound the irregularly broken cracks, widening the hole and fixing the coordinates. And as a result, flash! Oh my god! Seojiwoo's eyes widened in shock. Before them, a giant gate was created, emanating an ominous aura that felt suffocating just to look at. Ding! Gate Sea of the Afterlife has been created. Chapter 246. Announcement. Ragnarok manhwa official announcement. httpage.com 3846226 CT A4D 882387936360. Chapter 247. Chapter 245. Suho decided to take care of Seojiwoo first. Hunter Seojiwoo, thank you for your hard work. We'll stay here and look around the Sea of the Afterlife, so please go back outside and rest. Seojiwoo's role was essentially over. Since she was in a state where she couldn't even breathe properly just by being near the Sea of the Afterlife, it was urgent to send her out of the dungeon as soon as possible. Harmakan, guide her to the way out. When looked at, Harmakan, instead of personally escorting Seojiwoo out, used magic. Flash, The magic circle created in Harmakan's hand compressed into the size of a fist. Master, there's an easier way. Suho accepted the item handed to him. Ding. Obtained item, return stone. Return stone? An information window popped up before Suho. Item, consumable, an item created by Harmakan's magic. You can return outside the dungeon by breaking the return stone. Oh, you can make something like this too? It's just a petty trick I learned while researching Kandiaru's legacy. Harmakan spoke humbly, as if it was nothing, but his lips and shoulders were already twitching with excitement at Suho's surprised reaction. Can this item be used by anyone other than me? Originally, it was impossible, but I've specially modified this one so that anyone can use it near Master's shadow soldiers. Near shadow soldiers? Did you utilize the shadow exchange skill? As expected, you're sharp. Since I'm subordinate to Master, I've found that most of Kandiaru's legacy is magic that utilizes the shadow power from the beginning. I see. Suho nodded. The more he learned, the more it seemed like the demonic spirit race was a useful bunch. He immediately placed the return stone in Sojiwoo's hand and said, "Then please go back safely." This is... Sojiwoo, who suddenly had the return stone in her hand, had an expression that said she couldn't be surprised anymore. Well, since he even created a dungeon, she didn't have the mental capacity to be shocked even if a way to easily return appeared. Crack! Sojiwoo broke the return stone with her hand, as Suho explained, and she left the dimensional gap through the portal connected to the outside of Hapjeong Station. Master doesn't need to use the return stone. You can just use the shadow exchange skill. Yes. Speaking of which, I need to deploy soldiers around here in advance, so I can return anytime. It was good that he had a lot of shadow soldiers. If he spread them all over the place, he could move anywhere whenever the cooldown ended. Suho selected a few of the shadow demons he extracted today and a few shadow lizardmen and ordered them to continue guarding the front of the gate. Shadow Demon's title has been changed to Shadow Gatekeeper. Shadow Lizardman's title has been changed to Shadow Gatekeeper. Now, let's go in. Suho led the rest of his troops and stepped into the gate. Sea of the Afterlife. Flash. And at that moment, a sticky, pitch-black sky unfolded before Suho's eyes. A boundless expanse of melted, undulating darkness stretching in all directions. Ding, ding, ding. Warning messages suddenly began to pop up. A living body has come into contact with the energy of the Sea of the Afterlife. Debuff, death evaded, health decreases in real time, HP in real time. Wow. This was crazy. His HP was steadily decreasing by a whopping 100 every second. So if I stay here, I'll eventually die. Even Kandiaru's blessing doesn't work in the face of death. Of course, even the absolute being couldn't avoid death, so a blessing created by a mere creation is useless here. Antares, who had climbed onto Suho's shoulder, was scanning the surroundings with sharp eyes. It was vast. He couldn't spot anything like the world tree no matter where he looked. All he could see was sticky darkness. My liege, be careful. Just because you can't see anything doesn't mean there's nothing here. Beru had an unusually tense look in his eyes. The moment you fall into this sea, the rate at which your health decreases will accelerate. Fortunately, there was no chance of Suho falling into the sea. He had a skill he learned from the Ice Elf Circa, the successor of the Monarch of Frost. Splash. Suho's carefully extended foot succeeded in stepping on and walking across the Black Sea. Ooh! Master walked on water. Keek! As expected of Master. The shadow soldiers cheered with their hands raised. Suho was also relieved. That's a relief. If this skill didn't work, I was going to use the ruler's authority. The ruler's authority was closer to the concept of floating in the air rather than walking, so elven footsteps were less burdensome to use in many ways. Anyway, Suho, having solved the movement restriction, looked at the soldiers, including Beru. But are you guys okay? We are fine since we are already dead souls. That's a relief. The shadow soldiers didn't have the concept of HP, so there was no health to lose. Then what about Antares? Beep? Did you already run away? You little... The King of Dragons, the Monarch of Destruction, urges Ragnar to take refuge in the Shadow World. Ragnar, who was no longer possessed, was withering away on Suho's shoulder with a blank expression. Yes, you go in. Suho sent Ragnar back into his shadow. And as he watched his HP decreasing in real time, he bought a lot of healing potions from the shop. Purchased item, intermediate healing potion. Intermediate healing potion. Intermediate healing potion. The cost of potions is going to be significant. Suho wondered if there were any other places like this. A place where you absolutely must drink potions regularly, because even if you drink several at the same time, they don't restore HP any faster. In the end, the potions here were limited to barely maintaining his current health. If a battle breaks out in this state, it will be absolutely impossible to recover with just potions. My liege, why don't you leave the reconnaissance of this place to the soldiers and stay outside safely? That was Beru's advice. Let's look around as much as possible since we've already come this far. Suho spread the shadow lizardman, who could fly, in all directions to scout the surroundings, and he himself walked across the sea of the afterlife with elven footsteps. You must use shadow exchange with the soldiers outside the gate whenever you feel it's dangerous. Harmakan also spared no advice for Suho. No, it would be better to exchange with the soldiers you left on Earth. Considering the cooldown, that would be more efficient. It was then, they're here. Suho's eyes sharpened. Splash! Giant tentacles shot out from the sticky, pitch-black sea, targeting Suho from all directions. This really is a flower garden. Suho threw his dagger as if he had been waiting. Slash! 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 Ki! The battle suddenly began. Starting with the nightmare buds, nameless weeds also appeared and attacked Suho. Now that a human with abundant life force had entered the sea of the afterlife, their goal was obvious. Chomp! Chomp! Numerous plants opened their mouths wide to devour Suho. Some even popped out from under his feet. Protect the little monarch. Protect master. Actually, these guys weren't a problem individually. What could mere weeds do against the mighty shadow soldiers? The real issue was completely different. These weeds, it seems like they don't give experience points. Master, the Sea of the Afterlife is not a place for leveling up. It's an area that cannot be replicated even with Kandiaru's instance dungeon. I can't level up here. Suho's expression turned serious. This was a very, very serious problem. Suho looked around again. Again, the Sea of the Afterlife was vast, a truly boundless expanse. He had his army thoroughly search the area, but there was no sign of the world tree, not even a shadow. At this rate, he would end up wasting all his money on potions. So it's that kind of place. Let's change our approach. Suho's gaze suddenly lowered to his feet. Follow me, everyone. My liege? Beru was shocked. Suho, who was safely walking on the surface, suddenly jumped into the Sea of the Afterlife. Everyone, follow the little monarch. At Beru's urging, the soldiers followed Suho and dived into the sea and killed any weeds they saw down there. The problem was Suho. Ding. Health decreases in real time. The deeper you go, the stronger the effect of debuff. Death, 8th become, HP 120 in 49. This was truly death. The deeper he went, the more Suho's HP decreased. No wonder my father told me to level up first, before trying to find the world tree. Fortunately, thanks to diligently leveling up as his father said, he still had some leeway. Besides, he had no problem breathing in this strange black seawater. It was thanks to learning the trick of creating a protective barrier on his face with magic power from Essil when he was wandering in the desert before. As he left the small fry to the soldiers and swam deeper and deeper into the Sea of the Afterlife. Found it. Suho's eyes gleamed. Yes, the Sea of the Afterlife is where the dead wander. He was curious why he couldn't see anything, but they were all gathered down here. That's right. At the deep bottom of the Sea of the Afterlife, there was literally hell. An awful lot of souls. Countless residents of the mixed world, including humans, were submerged like cold corpses. But no matter their appearance, their eyes, already dead, were simply empty. Even the souls that were already tattered from having their nutrients sucked out by weeds couldn't feel any pain and were simply one with this black water. Beru, who was clinging close to protect him, looked at him with uneasy eyes. Suho, who finally faced the terrifying reality of the Sea of the Afterlife after diving in, a big catch, but he was smiling, more brightly than ever. Arise, everyone. Shadow extraction successful. Shadow extraction successful. Shadow extraction successful. The king of dragons, the monarch of destruction, grumbles that this is just so unfair. Chapter 248, Chapter 246. What was the shadow power? It was the ability to pull dead souls drifting in the sea of the afterlife back from the depths. Although the shadow of the corpse that the soul used in life was needed as a medium, that intermediate step could be omitted now that he had directly entered the sea of the afterlife. All he had to do was grab the ghosts by the scruff of their necks and pull them up. Arise! With the shadow power that Suho unleashed, the sea of the afterlife surged. Rumble. Large and small ripples began to appear on the surface of the pitch-black water that flowed like a single organism. The cause was the countless ghosts that were sinking like corpses in the deep abyss below. Flash! Light returned to their unfocused eyes. Their dormant consciousness revived. Distant memories surfaced, and finally, Gra! Kra! They rose vigorously. Splash! But the sea of the afterlife had no intention of letting them go. The sticky, mucus-like black seawater clung tenaciously to the ghosts' bodies, the will to drag the dead souls back down. This force was what ruled this place. It was the gravity and natural order here, but the shadow power defied that natural order. Splash! The ripples that started on the calmly flowing surface soon became waves surging into a tsunami. The black sea swirled. And above that, the ghosts, who finally succeeded in rising, appeared majestically before Suho, drenched in the seawater that was still pulling them towards death. Rumble. The sticky, pitch-black seawater of the Sea of the Afterlife was shimmering like black steam due to the fighting spirit emanating from their bodies. Shadow extraction, successful. Successful. Shadow extraction, successful. Along with countless system messages, Suho saw new soldiers composed of numerous races, residents of the mixed world who lived in various dimensions. On Earth, they were called magical beasts or monsters, but their true nature was the souls of warriors who died nameless in wars and history over countless years. This is amazing! Truly a big catch! Beru shouted with excitement. These are souls that couldn't be incorporated into the Shadow Army. How could we extract those we've never even encountered before as soldiers? That's right. From the previous Shadow Monarch, Ashborn, to the current monarch, Sung Jinwoo. Even they couldn't turn all the souls that died in every dimension of the universe into part of their army. The ones that died without any connection to the war, without even knowing the Shadow Monarch, were all gathered here in the Sea of the Afterlife. Smirk. Suho's lips curled up in satisfaction as he checked each one of them. There were races he knew because he had encountered them as dungeon magical beasts, and there were also those he had never seen before. There were even races that were ridiculously weak, unable to fight on the front lines of the war, but some of them showed talents unrelated to combat. And in the midst of that, Suho frowned with a dissatisfied expression. Looking again, not all souls were successfully extracted. Attempting shadow extraction. Extraction in progress. Shadow extraction failed. Extraction in progress. Shadow extraction failed. Shadow extraction failed. Oh dear. Suho tried to extract the failed ghosts again and again, but it was a complete failure. Shadow extraction failed. There were two reasons. The probability of extraction failure increases in proportion to the target's stats and the time elapsed since the target's death. First, the time elapsed since death. The ghosts who came to the Sea of the Afterlife a very long time ago were tattered from having their nutrients sucked out by the weeds. And even if it wasn't because of them, they had melted into the Sea of the Afterlife to the point where they couldn't be resurrected even with the shadow power. If he forcibly extracted them, they probably wouldn't be able to function properly as Soldi heirs. But that wasn't why Suho was frowning. The target stats, you mean you won't acknowledge me as your master? There were ghosts who remained silent, not responding to his words. Each one of them seemed extraordinary. Just then, Beru, who realized the reason, patted Suho's shoulder from the side, smiling warmly, with an expression like that of a parent looking at their growing child. What can you do? It's because you're not the true Shadow Monarch, my liege. Of course, they would have jumped up at the slightest wave of the king's hand, but it seems that the little monarch's shadow power is not enough to persuade them. Pat, Pat. Think positively. Doesn't this motivate you? Look. Those arrogant ghosts. Next time you come back after leveling up, those arrogant guys will welcome you with open arms, wanting to be part of your army. Was this encouragement or teasing? Suho, who would normally have been annoyed by Beru's words, glared at them with serious eyes. Yes. The sea of the afterlife was vast and deep. Among the countless souls sleeping here, there were plenty of extraordinary ones that he couldn't subdue with his current power. If he didn't have the qualifications to become their master yet, he just had to go and acquire those. Yes, just you wait. Suho decided to wait for the next time. And he reaffirmed his resolve to level up as soon as possible and extract those arrogant guys before these precious souls were devoured by the weeds here. The problem was that Suho's health was rapidly plummeting in the meantime. My liege, it's too dangerous. Yes, let's go up. Whoosh! As he surfaced again, the rapidly decreasing HP began to slow down. But when he came out, the speed didn't immediately drop to -100. What was in ninth form? 4-1. Only after the black water clinging to Suho's body was completely gone did his HP start decreasing by 100 per second normally. He immediately took out a potion and drank it. It would have been a big problem if I came out too late. My liege, for now, why don't you go outside for a while, recover and come back? In this state, it might be dangerous even if you find the world tree. Yes, let's do that. But first. Suho looked at the newly acquired soldiers and asked, "Do any of you know the location of the world tree?" Of course, there was no answer. They would have been unconscious from the moment they came here. Suho was disappointed and gave orders to the winged soldiers he sorted out separately. "I'll be out for a while, so you guys with wings stay here and look for the world tree. And if you see any weeds, we will eradicate them thoroughly." Sita's eyes flashed from among the shadow lizardmen. "We can't let those weeds devour these precious souls." "Yes, scatter if you understand." As soon as Suho finished speaking, the winged soldiers immediately spread their wings and soared. He watched them for a moment, using skill shadow exchange. Snap! At that time, a tremendous cheer erupted from Esil's territory. "It's over. We endured the trial. We finally overcame the trial." The sight of the demons barely holding off the invasion of the residents of the Gap was truly miserable. Some had lost limbs, while others were on the verge of death with black blood flowing all over their bodies. They were completely battered, but despite that, they could rejoice at this moment because they had proven their qualifications as demons. Demons. At the sudden resounding voice, all the demons turned their heads. Esil, the eldest daughter of the Radiru family. "No, our king, Esil Radiru." Receiving the passionate gazes of the demons, Isil stood firm despite her body looking like it could collapse at any moment. And she proudly faced the gazes of all the demons looking up to her. Smirking, she raised her lips, revealing her sharp fangs. "Yes! We won!" Ooh-ah! At those words, the demon world erupted with cheers. The moment the invasion began, the moment they witnessed the residents of the Gap suddenly invading the demon world. The demons, who had been living without knowing anything, instinctively realized. If they couldn't overcome this trial, their situation would be reversed with those residents of the Gap. The absolute fear that they would no longer be able to exist as demons overcame them. But now they could proudly say, "We are the true demons." The demons were once again excited by Esil's declaration. They truly acknowledged it. The fact that the pure-blooded demon noble Esil Radiru was their king. But it was then, crackle, the sky collapsed. Rumble, crash, thunderbolt. The fear of white flames suddenly struck down from the calmed sky of the demon world. "What? Is this a second wave? We don't have the strength to endure anymore." The demons despaired, and they instinctively looked at their king, Esil Radiru, with pleading eyes. She looked up at the sky with a stiff expression. "Don't worry, the trial is over." The demons were greatly relieved at those words. But despite that, Esil's hardened expression as she looked beyond the cloudy sky didn't relax. The demons whispered in fear at that sight. If it's not a trial, what's happening up there? But a while later, Asil's eyes, which had been staring at the sky silently for a long time, widened. He's here! Crackle! At that moment, black lightning bolts struck down from the sky to the ground. All the demons were astonished by that truly terrifying sight, but only Isil ran forward with an overjoyed expression, kicking off the ground. Sung Suho. It wasn't black lightning. Black shadows that transcended dimensions, centered on Sung Suho, who had returned to the demon world using the shadow soldiers he left there. Isil. Suho found Isil at the center of the black, energy-emitting shadow soldiers, and he opened his inventory, taking out a potion with one hand and putting it in his mouth. With the other hand, he took out another item he had obtained this time. After defeating Baran's soul, this was the only item left. But Suho knew how to use it. He handed Baran's horn to Isil and said, "From now on, you are the Demon King." Isil's body was engulfed in black energy as she received the horn. Chapter 249, Chapter 247. It was a truly magnificent sight. Crackle, underneath the thunder and lightning that poured down from the sky. The sight of Sung Suho appearing with numerous black legions and handing over the horn of the previous Demon King to Isil Radiru. It was like a solemn and magnificent painting, reminiscent of a knight's inauguration ceremony. Whoosh! And the moment Isil received Baran's horn with both hands, an old demon muttered in a trance as he saw her suddenly engulfed in black energy. A new king has been born in this land that lost its master. With those words, all the demons began to prostrate themselves and worship as if on king has been born. "Oh, king of demons! Ah, Isil Radiru! Ooh-wah!" Everyone was united in heart and mind, shouting Isil's name as if in a frenzy. But, the reality was completely different from what the demons saw. I'm going to be devoured if I'm not careful. Isil herself was in danger. Rumble. From the moment she inadvertently received Baran's horn from Suho, Isil's expression had been stiff. Baran's horn was suddenly trying to suck her in with tremendous force, like the residents of the gap, with the will to devour all the nutrients within her. This is succession, Isil instinctively realized. At this moment, Baran's horn was asking her if she truly had the right to become king. And if she wasn't a worthy vessel, is it going to devour me and take my soul instead? I see. This was the Demon King's succession ceremony, the last struggle of Baran, whose spiritual body was destroyed and scattered as scraps. And then, you are weak. A giggling, mocking voice whispered softly to Isil. At that moment, she realized her fate. You are not qualified. Ultimately, Isil's mind, which had been fiercely resisting the pull, was helplessly swallowed by the abyss. Whoosh! Wah! In a bottomless abyss. How much time had passed? Wah! Isil was endlessly falling into the deep abyss, where even the flow of time couldn't be felt. While in that state for ages, something began to appear at the edge of her vision, where previously nothing could be seen. At first, it looked like a hazy pillar, and after so long, Isil finally fell low enough that she could clearly see what it was. Oh my God! All she could do was gasp in astonishment. Could this be? Isil faced it. In the deepest, widest darkness, a giant tree that grew with its roots at the edge of the sea of the afterlife. The world tree? She didn't need anyone to tell her. Her instincts as a demon, the memories of being a resident of the gap before that, whispered the truth. This was it. This giant, emitting light even in this bottomless abyss, was the world tree. But why? Isil was puzzled. How did her soul, which failed the succession and was eventually devoured by Baran's horn, end up here before the world tree? No, it wasn't even right to say she arrived. She was still falling. The size of the world tree was so immense that she couldn't perceive it. But that didn't matter, because the moment she saw the world tree, there was only one thought that came to Isil's mind. Suho. She had to tell Suho about this. Suho, here. The world tree you're looking for is right here. But no matter how much she shouted, Isil's voice didn't come out. Even if she could make a sound, there was no way her words would reach Suho in this vast abyss, so she decided to change her approach. Since it's come to this, I'll bring it myself, Isil thought. First of all, what Suho wanted wasn't the location of the world tree, but a branch of the world tree, wasn't it? So I can break off a branch of the world tree and bring it to him. As she thought that, the name Vulcan suddenly came to Essel's mind. What was the reason why Vulcan, who was a mere insect, could evolve into a demon noble? The world tree. Wasn't it because he broke off a branch of the world tree and ate its leaves? If that principle worked, then maybe? If I grab a branch of the world tree, can I grab a new opportunity again? Like Vulcan? It was the moment when the most primal instinct that supported the demon race, the survival instinct, wriggled within Essel. Stretch, Essel, who was endlessly falling downwards, desperately reached out her hand towards the world tree. Just a little bit more. If she wished and desired, she would move. Essel's soul, reaching out with impatience, began to move towards the world tree little by little, and finally, touch, the moment Essel's fingertips brushed the branch of the world tree. I got it! Suddenly, with an earth-shattering roar, a giant snake appeared, coiling around the world tree and blocking her path. Essel hurriedly withdrew her hand as if she had been burned. She was terrified to the core, seeing the monster that appeared before her. Oh my God! What is that? An absurdly large snake was coiling around the world tree, and it had 7 heads. Is it guarding the world tree? Is it just living here? A snake living in the sea of the afterlife? She was full of questions, but Essel didn't have the time to solve those mysteries now. One of the giant snake's heads spotted her and suddenly turned. It opened its mouth to devour Essel. Oh no! The snake's mouth, wide open like a crocodile's, filled her entire vision. Essel's soul, still falling, couldn't escape and was destined to be swallowed whole. It was then ding! Passive skill unknown is activated. Essel's eyes widened. She suddenly saw a broad back blocking her path. A sharp jawline could be seen above it, muttering, this is a first. Suho? Suho suddenly appeared before her. Essel opened her mouth in surprise and excitement. Did you come all the way here to save me? No, I was brought here too. What? I'm the priest, after all. Suho replied with a chuckle. The moment Essel started falling into the abyss, Suho's time was stopped. But the difference was that he wasn't instantly falling. He was summoned right before her. Just what kind of skill is this? Suho looked ahead with a troubled expression, and he glared at the giant snake that was approaching with its mouth wide open to devour them. A name tag appeared above the snake's head. A snake living in the world tree. I feel like I've seen a similar myth somewhere. A snake with 7 heads. The Dragon King, the monarch of destruction, smirks and says, "This is the true succession ceremony." Antares immediately responded to Suho's words. But he wasn't the only monarch who spoke. The king of beasts, the Fang monarch, says that this snake possesses the masterless primordial darkness. The queen of insects, the plague monarch. In short, this is what it meant. This guy devoured all the primordial darkness that the monarchs spat out when they died? No, devoured wasn't the right expression. This guy was the primordial darkness that had been split into 8, now merged back into 1. Wasn't the proof the 7 heads attached to this snake? Nidhugg? 1 primordial darkness fragment per head. But why 7? Where did 1 go? The king of the snowfolk, the monarch of frost, urges that now is not the time. That's right. Escaping from here was the priority. But it was too late. There was nowhere to hide. In the end, Nidhugg's mouth swallowed Suho and Asil whole. But at that moment, gulp, the snake's tightly closed mouth bulged. Oh my God, inside Asil witnessed it. Suho, standing before her with his arms raised, supporting the roof of the snake's mouth. Nidhugg's roar, trying to crush them with its strength, blew like a wind through its throat. But Suho just smirked. I'm confident in a contest of strength. It was a good thing that only his mind was dragged here. If his body had come along, his HP would be decreasing in real time due to the debuff, death. But just enduring like this, didn't solve anything. Isil, Suho shouted towards Essel while supporting the roof of the mouth. Yeah. She was frozen in fear behind him, unable to move. This wasn't just being scared, but the manifestation of the debuff, fear effect. Isil, I can't summon shadow soldiers here. We have to catch this guy ourselves. See, catch? This guy? Of course. Smirk. Suho had developed a strange habit. The worse the situation, the more his lips curled up. He learned it through experience that the greater the risk before him, the greater the reward he would obtain. Therefore, We have to cut off at least one of its heads for you to become king, don't we? Suho decided to face the trial with a smile. It will be a little hot. Using skill monarch's whoosh, black shadows spread out from Suho in all directions. Flare, crimson flames blazed on the shadow that filled Nidhugg's mouth. Crack! Even in this situation, Nidhugg's will to somehow chew and swallow them was admirable. Perhaps this level of pain wouldn't cause much damage. The opponent was a guy who possessed the 7 fragments of the primordial darkness. But what if he did this, using debuff mad-blooded poison? Mad-blooded poison seeped out from Suho. The queen of insects, the plague monarch, opens her eyes. The queen of insects, the plague monarch, explains that mad-blooded poison is useless against Nidhugg. I know. Who said I was going to use it on him? Suho smirked and chuckled at Queretia's words. Mad-blooded poison. When ingested, it causes the blood to boil, temporarily amplifying strength. However, it has the fatal side effect of causing extreme pain whenever magic power is used. It consumes blood, gradually reducing lifespan. This poison was originally made for demons. As soon as he finished those words, behind Suho, ooh-ah! Essel was struggling to get up. Buff. Mad-blooded poison is activated on Essel Radiru. The queen of insects, the plague monarch, opens her mouth in surprise. Amplification of strength accompanied by pain. Since the demon race was a race accustomed to spiritualization, the effects of mad-blooded poison were applied even in their spiritualized state. And there was something else that was possible because of this world. Essel's spiritual body, the nutrients that made up her. The blood boiled, and her power as a demon noble was temporarily strengthened. Essel routed skill evolves into skill blood crystal. This power, Essel herself seemed bewildered. But Suho just chuckled and muttered in satisfaction. Did you finally realize it? Blood crystal, the power used by the Demon King Baron's soul. Essel, who finally awakened that power herself, had earned the right to become king. It's because of the drug, so it's not really on her own. Well, anyway. Essel. Suho shouted towards Essel, whose soul itself was firmly compressed and refined. You take over from now on. Crack! At Suho's words, Essel immediately raised both arms and took over the roof of the snake's mouth that Suho had been supporting. She couldn't help but widen her eyes at the tremendous pressure she felt. To think Suho had been enduring this absurd power. I can't hold on for long. It's okay. Just a moment. Thanks to her, Suho's hands were finally free. Russell and 2 Kamish's wrath daggers appeared in those hands. I'll do the cutting. Suho's eyes gleamed, using skill breath of destruction. Flare! At that moment, one of Nidhugg's 7 heads was pierced by the beam of destruction. Chapter 250. Chapter 248, Breath of Destruction. The hellfire that boiled from the Dragon Emperor's heart erupted in a straight line through Kamish's wrath. Whoosh! The immense heat that surged forth was suffocating. If it had been a dagger made of ordinary materials, it would have melted, unable to withstand this firepower. But Kamish's wrath, made from a dragon's tooth, had excellent synergy with the breath of destruction. After all, if a dragon's teeth couldn't withstand it, their fangs wouldn't remain intact every time they breathed fire. Perhaps it was the same for Nidhugg. However, while its bones and teeth might be able to withstand the breath of destruction, its soft palate was a different story. Boom, boom, boom. The breath of destruction finally melted through the palate of Nidhugg, which had swallowed Suho and Essel, and pierced a hole straight through its head. But was it because it had 7 heads? Nidhugg didn't die just because a small hole was pierced in one of its skulls. Rather, it clenched its jaw even harder to chew Suho and Essel. Crack! Ugh! As a result, Essel's leg, supporting the mouth's roof instead of Suho, finally broke, unable to withstand the force. But she didn't even scream. Instead, the moment her leg broke, she gritted her teeth, bent the other one, and supported the pallet with her back. I'm still okay, so keep going. Essel shouted at Suho's back, trying to endure as long as possible. At her cry veins popped out on the back of Suho's hand, gripping Kamish's wrath. Just a little bit more. Sweat trickled down Suho's forehead as he continued to unleash the destructive beam, cutting off the snake's head bit by bit. This overwhelmingly powerful destructive beam consumed an enormous amount of mana, and its recoil was as great as its power. Even turning it sideways like this wasn't easy, but it was worth it. The hole in the creature's head was widening as Suho's destructive beam gradually moved sideways. "I'm gonna cut it off." Ka! Ah! He did it! Finally, Nidhugg, with its neck half cut off, couldn't bear the pain, opened its mouth wide, and let out a scream. At the same time, Essel was freed from the pressure that was about to crush her whole body, and she could finally look ahead. A large hole was open, melted by the hellfire, big enough to see the world tree clearly, but an even greater crisis came through that opening. Nidhugg's other 6 heads, feeling the pain, began to take notice one by one. At that moment, a tremendous killing intent focused on Suho and Isil, and through the hole pierced by the breath of destruction, their eyes met. Nidhugg, the serpent that gnaws at the world tree, is watching you. Shiver. As 6 pairs of eyes simultaneously turned towards them, Suho stiffened. Just making eye contact, he felt his whole body tingling from the tremendous pressure. Effect: fear is activated. All of the player's stats are reduced by 50% for 1 minute. Ha! Suho, facing those gazes, let out a hollow laugh in disbelief. The breath of destruction was cut off due to the effect that temporarily reduced his stats. His mana was already half depleted, and now it was halved again. Even if he used the breath of destruction again, his magic power wasn't enough to deal with all 6 remaining heads. Potions and the shop cannot be used in the current location, and status will not be recovered even if the level increases. Moreover, the use of potions was restricted because he was dragged here by the unknown skill. Just then, Nidhugg's 6 heads roared at Suho simultaneously. At that moment, those who were most worried about Suho appeared. The dead monarchs. King of the snowfolk, the monarch of frost, causes a blizzard to obscure Nidhugg's vision. A bitterly cold blizzard swept in, and one of Nidhugg's mouth, which had been melting from the intense heat, was now frozen by the cold. Queen of insects, the monarch of Lagus, attempts to poison Nidhugg but fails. Queen of insects, the monarch of plagues, attempts to poison Nidhugg but fails. King of beasts, the monarch of fangs, urges you to run away quickly. But then, Suho, Isil, who had somehow approached Suho, spoke with difficulty. She crawled all the way here with her limb broken. Run. They had to run away now. She wanted to say those words, but Essel couldn't even finish her sentence because of her teeth chattering. Even Suho was this way, so the fear Essel was feeling was indescribable, but the survival instinct engraved in her soul was making the most rational yet inefficient choice at this moment. This? Essel's trembling hand held out something towards Suho. Russell. This is? Suho's eyes widened as he confirmed its identity. A leaf of the world tree. A small leaf that was attached to the end of the branch that Essel barely managed to touch with her fingertips while falling was held in her palm. Ding. Obtained item, leaf of the world tree. Essel placed the leaf in Suho's palm with her trembling hand. Her fearful eyes looked directly at his as she spoke. Eat this. Even at this moment, Essel's instincts were whispering that she, not Suho, should eat this leaf. That if she ate this leaf, she might be able to evolve into a stronger demon like Vulcan. But Essel knew herself well. I am weak. This single leaf. How much stronger could she become just by eating this one thing? It wasn't like she was going to eat all the leaves on the branch like Vulcan. No, forget about getting stronger. Could she even escape from here in the first place? But Suho would be different. You, eat it. Essel had no doubt that it would be different if Suho ate it, not her. At least you, run away. She didn't know how much it would help, but she wanted Suho to at least escape from this place. Squeeze. With that feeling, Essel placed a small leaf of the world tree in Suho's hand. And then, ding, a miracle happened. The moment he touched it, an information window popped up before Suho's eyes. Leaf of the world tree. Type material, a leaf plucked from a branch of the world tree. The leaf of the world tree possesses strong vitality. It is used as an ingredient for top-grade magic reagents. It is a main ingredient for potions. Potion ingredient? Suho's eyes widened. Was it a coincidence that he found an ingredient used to make potions in this place where he couldn't use the shop or potions? No. Seeing Essel's current state, no one would dare to dismiss it as luck. Crunch! Suho unhesitatingly put the leaf of the world tree in his mouth and chewed. Then something amazing happened. Whoosh! A blue energy enveloped his entire body. The feeling of fresh air entering and leaving his lungs. It was a familiar sensation that Suho experienced every day. Ding! All abnormal statuses are recovered. Ah, so it was a potion ingredient. His depleted health and mana were fully restored. He felt that the reward for the daily quest created by Kandiaru might be based on the leaves of the world tree. The proof was this. The effect of Kandiaru's blessing, health and longevity, is temporarily strengthened, resisting debuff fear. His body, which had become heavy from Nidhugg's killing intent, felt light again. At that moment, Suho realized what he had to do. Ruler's authority. Step, 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 step. Suho boldly stepped on the air and soared. Krah! Nidhugg's 6 heads opened their mouths towards Suho, emitting a more ferocious killing intent than ever. It was the moment when the creatures, who had been staring blankly at Suho, finally turned hostile towards him. Nidhugg, the serpent that gnaws at the world tree, is wary of the ruler's authority. Nidhugg, the serpent that gnaws at the world tree, is hostile towards you. Crack! Crack! Suho twisted and turned in the air, dodging their bites by a hair's breadth. As a result, only the innocent branches of the world tree that they were clinging to were snapped and fell, unable to withstand their struggles. That was exactly what he wanted. Come. Suho shot Kamish's wrath towards the falling branches of the world tree. Whoosh! Although he called them branches, that was only from the perspective of the world tree. To Suho, each one of them was gigantic. He wasn't actually aiming for the branches, but the numerous leaves growing on them. Slash! Kamish's wrath slashed through the air, and the leaves cut from the world tree all flew towards Suho, thanks to the ruler's authority. Crunch! Suho immediately chewed and swallowed another leaf. All abnormal statuses are recovered. It was the same this time. His health and mana were recharged as if he had leveled up. But there was a critical problem. The Dragon King, the Monarch of Destruction, urges you to look at Nidhugg's wounds. As Antares said, Suho wasn't the only one who could eat the leaves of the world tree. Crunch, munch, munch. One of Nidhugg's heads was already chewing and swallowing a nearby branch of the world tree whole. And then, the wound where Suho had cut off half its neck earlier began to heal rapidly. So this is what it means to be a snake that gnaws at the world tree. Essil, open your mouth, Suho shouted towards Essil, who was still inside before the wound completely healed. Whoosh! Like a spring breeze, the leaves of the world tree swirled and flew. Essil, prepared to die, was startled to see the numerous leaves flying towards her and opened her mouth. Suho chuckled at that foolish expression and said, "Debt repaid." A favor compensated 1,000-fold. Just before the creature's wounds completely healed, all the leaves reached Essil. Whoosh! The wounds completely healed, and Essil disappeared from sight. But Suho wasn't worried. Come back stronger, Essil. It didn't take long. The head of Nidhugg that swallowed Essil suddenly swelled up, and, crackle, with a tremendous roar, it burst. But there was no blood or flesh in that explosion, just darkness. Primordial darkness is inherited by a new monarch. Whoosh! Darkness swirled and beyond. Essil's eyes were gleaming. Nidhugg, the serpent that gnaws at the world tree, retreats. The 6 remaining heads hurriedly retreated. Like a lizard cutting off its tail and running away, it abandoned one of its heads and was trying to escape without hesitation. The darkness that originally came from the king of demons, the monarch of white flames, Baron, now had a new master. Whoosh! At the center of the swirling black, Essil Radiru, who absorbed the primordial darkness, was floating in the air with her hair fluttering, looking at Suho with a more mature and serious gaze than usual. But the title of the new master recognized by the primordial darkness was a little different from that of the demon king Baron. The king of demons, the monarch of gluttony, is born. Monarch of gluttony? It probably meant she was a glutton. Before he could even finish that thought, Suho and Essil's minds were ejected out of the sea of the afterlife. Whoosh! Wah! The sudden cheers of the demons resounded. Suho and Essil had returned to reality in the same position as before, with Essil about to receive the item, Baron's horn, from Suho. But she didn't panic and knelt with grace. "Thank you, my liege." Essil lowered herself and bowed deeply to the priest who made her king. "The king of demons, the monarch of gluttony, pledges allegiance to you." The king of demons, the monarch of gluttony, offers you the blessing of gluttony. Blessing of gluttony. Blessing of the king of demons, the monarch of gluttony. The monarch of gluttony, Esil Radiru, pledges allegiance to you. You can now absorb and digest the nutrients of the mixed world more efficiently. Effect, gluttony. Increases experience points gained by 300%. Chapter 251, Chapter 249, Suho was ecstatic. That's insane. A 3x experience boost? He felt dizzy seeing the reward that was beyond his imagination. Esil. Suho placed his hand on Esil's shoulder and looked into her eyes with a burning gaze. Congratulations on becoming king. We're together for life. Master. She understood his sincerity. Esil also teared up with a deeply moved and overwhelmed expression at Suho's words. Wasn't it true that she was a disappointment who had already failed the succession ceremony once due to lack of qualification? She was a sinner who dared to try to become king without the necessary capability. As punishment for that sin, she was destined to be devoured by Needhog, sucked into the primordial darkness, instead of becoming king. But it was Suho who suddenly appeared and overturned all that fate. It was him who forcibly grabbed her soul by the scruff of its neck and pulled it up, making her a king. Esil rose with tears in her eyes, clenching her fists. Master, I will do my best from now on. Keek, how dare you, to say such an obvious thing now? How incompetent have you been until now? Beru, the senior who suddenly appeared, was aghast. But Esil was already a soldier with a strong sense of duty. No, I will do better. Your voice is too small. I will do much, much better. Not enough. Beru and Esil were passionately singing their loyalty with veins bulging in their necks. Esil had evolved into the Demon King, becoming much more glamorous and dignified than usual. But her mindset was more humble and sincere than ever. Suho standing before her was the savior of her soul, the master she had to serve for the rest of her life. Louder, I will serve you with all my loyalty. If you wish, my body, mind, and soul, I will dedicate everything I have. Okay, then let's draw some blood. What? Suho, who gladly accepted Esil's heart, was smiling brightly. I'm asking for a blood donation. He had been waiting for this moment. Purified blood of the Demon King, one of the 3 ingredients for the holy water of life. Now that Esil had become the Demon King, he could draw an unlimited amount of Demon King's blood. Of course, Suho knew how important blood was to the demon race, but if Esil had any conscience, it was time for her to earn her keep. Actually, he hadn't mentioned it, but a significant portion of the money Suho earned as a hunter went to Esil's food expenses, or rather, meat expenses. Perhaps the reason why she was called the Monarch of Gluttony was because of that. Which was greater, the number of leaves of the world tree that Esil ate, or the amount of meat she devoured like crazy to recover her diminished strength? The latter was clearly the winner. No wonder the butcher in Suho's neighborhood became the building's owner. That butcher hadn't even awakened as a hunter, yet he made as much money as one. And that was even after giving Suho a huge discount at wholesale price because he was a regular customer. Actually, instead of the Monarch of Gluttony, maybe she's the Monarch of Eating. Suho truly thought so. But in any case, wasn't it all right if the result was good? It was all an investment for this moment. Those meat expenses? They were nothing compared to the holy water of life. I will give it to you, if you want my blood, Esil replied with a determined look at Suho's first order. Purify it before you give it to me. Yes, the king of demons, the monarch of gluttony, uses skill, blood crystal. Fortunately, there was no need to draw blood with a syringe. Swoosh! A fist-sized drop of blood appeared on Esil's palm. Originally, the blood of demons was black. But perhaps because of how much Esil refined her blood, the blood crystal she created was shimmering red. And even the smell wasn't fishy, but rather fragrant. Ooh! All the demons trembled with emotion at that marvelous sight. It's blood crystal! Blood crystal! As expected of the Demon King. Oh, King, if bloodstone was the exclusive property of nobles, blood crystal was its superior version. It was the unique power of the Demon King to highly refine demon blood. The blood crystal had various uses, but for now, they focused solely on drawing blood. Pop. As Suho bought a transparent glass bottle from the shop and pulled out the stopper, Esil's blood crystal immediately flew into the air and was sucked into it. Ding! Obtained item, purified blood of the Demon King. Material item, purified blood of the Demon King. Acquisition difficulty. Type, material, a liquid made by refining the blood of the King of Demons, Esil Radiru. Although it contains strong magic power, it still is toxic even after purification. To use it as medicine, you need the fragment of the world tree and spring water of the echo forest to neutralize the toxicity. This is the Demon King's blood. Suho smiled with satisfaction. The red liquid in the transparent glass bottle sloshed around. Looking at it like this, it seemed like a fancy perfume bottle, but its value was incomparably greater. Holy water of life. Purified blood of the Demon King. Fragment of the world tree. Spring water of the echo forest. Keek. Now there's only one ingredient left. You can craft the holy water of life if you just have the fragment of the world tree. Tsk, that's a shame. I should have brought those branches somehow. Beru tilted his head. Suho was frowning and clicking his tongue when he should be happy. Recalling the branches of the world tree that were falling from Nidhogg's struggles, he felt regretful. But he didn't have the time to do that back then. Nidhogg's 6 giant heads were snapping their mouths here and there to devour him, and it was already overwhelming just to dodge their bites and collect the leaves. He needed to think positively and reconsider. Even if he had managed to get his hands on those branches, it might have been impossible to bring them to reality. Only his mind had crossed over to the sea of the afterlife due to the unknown skill. When he returned after fighting Croatia, not even a single wing fragment of those swarming poisonous insects was attached to his clothes. That was Suho's best attempt at positive thinking. But it was too early to give up. Master, do you have any more orders? That's a good attitude. Beru finally gave her a passing grade. Even after handing over the blood crystal to Suho, Asil's eyes were burning with a sense of mission. Seeing those eyes, Suho had a good idea. Asil, his eyes sparkled. Can you go back to that place? Are you talking about the world tree? Asil frowned and tried to recall her memories, the thing that emitted light in the darkness. The impact of the world tree was so strong that she couldn't clearly remember what the surroundings were like, but maybe it should be possible. Oh, really? Yes, the scent of the world tree still lingers in my mouth. Even if her eyes couldn't remember, her other senses could. This was the dignity of the monarch of gluttony, the one who devoured countless leaves of the world tree. Smacking her lips, Asil proudly pointed at her chest with her thumb and said, "And that scent is also flowing in my blood." No wonder the smell of the blood crystal was fragrant. Then, if you let other demons smell your blood? Then, of course, smirk. Before he could even finish his words, Suho and Asil smiled meaningfully at each other. They understood each other's thoughts. All the demons under my command will be able to wander the sea of the afterlife and track the scent of the world tree. Demons were sensitive to the smell of blood. Moreover, any demon who couldn't remember the smell of the Demon King's blood deserved to die. If the scent of the world tree was mixed with Asil's blood, the demons would be able to search for the world tree much more effectively than the shadow soldiers who were currently wandering the sea of the afterlife. Demons wandering the sea of the afterlife. That's a R. Eel hell. It was a strangely fitting combination. But are you really okay with this? The weeds will target you if you go there. In fact, the residents of the Gap had just invaded the demons gathered here. But going to the sea of the afterlife, which was teeming with not only the residents of the Gap but also weeds, was like walking into their own graves. But the demons who overcame the trial are strong. The demons gathered here were all warriors who survived the trial. Representing them, Asil dismissed Suho's worries with a confident expression. The reason we're strong is that we realized how weak and insignificant we are through the trial. Rumble. At Asil's words, the energy of the surviving demons quietly flared up like flames. That's why we desire to become even stronger. We are still weak. If there's a way to become more powerful than we are now, not being picky about the means or methods is the foundation that governs the demon world. And Asil had now realized the leaf of the world tree. Since I have personally confirmed that the legend of the demon of greed Vulcan evolving after eating the leaves of the world tree is true, we demons will definitely find it no matter where it is. To become stronger. That one purpose would be enough. For demons, strength was survival. Moreover, most of the demons Azil commanded were low-ranking. For the survival of the demon race, not just me, but all demons must become stronger than we are now. Then we need to divide the roles. Suho couldn't sacrifice innocent demons to the weeds, so he came up with a strategy. The demons will track the scent, and the shadow soldiers will escort you. No, we will fight as well. We cannot entrust our survival to others. It's a sea there. Do you have wings? Ah. Esil had forgotten an important point. Looking back, there weren't many demons with wings. As Suho said, even at this moment, the shadow soldiers wandering the sea of the afterlife were all winged. Then we will fight even if we have to swim. Wait. There's a better way. Having already been to the sea of the afterlife twice, Suho brought up the idea he had been thinking about. We'll build a ship. Esil's eyes widened at the unexpected words. Chapter 252, Chapter 250. Is that possible? To build a ship that floats on the sea of the afterlife? From Esil's perspective, having just been there, Suho's words were incomprehensible. The sea of the afterlife was a spiritual universe where dead souls drifted. Despite its name, it was different from the ordinary sea, existing as a completely different concept. Suho's plan to build and sail a ship in such a place was a notion far beyond her comprehension. Would a ship even withstand that place? No matter how strong the materials are, the moment they come into contact with the air there, they will instantly rot. But Suho immediately shattered Asil's concerns. The materials are scattered all over the place here, aren't they? What? Asil's head turned to follow Suho's gaze. And there. Ah! A gasp escaped her lips. This was the demon world where the trial had just ended. Thanks to that, the corpses of the residents of the Gap that the demons killed were scattered all over the place. Actually, the expression killed was inaccurate. The residents of the Gap were completely destroyed and had returned to their original form, piles of weeds. Suho shrugged. I fought there myself. I saw them all floating on the sea of the afterlife. How about it? Aren't they good enough as materials? Asil was speechless with admiration. Of course, it was enough. These weeds were literally lumber that sprouted and grew in the sea of the afterlife. As expected, our liege is brilliant. Of course, it's possible. Beru appeared majestically. He was so proud of Suho that his lips were practically touching his ears, and he clung to Suho's head, stroking it vigorously. He hadn't been this overjoyed since baby Suho first called him Emp. Perhaps that was when it all started. Beru began to actively teach Suho Korean. And it was the same now. Sniffle. Beru's narrowed eyes gleamed like that of an intellectual and cold-hearted tutor. The explanation bug had appeared. In fact, when you think about it, there's no race more suitable for traveling the sea of the afterlife than demons. Debuff, death. This curse of death, activated upon entering the sea of the afterlife, was the worst hindrance that consumed one's lifespan in real time. Even just by breathing, a whopping 100 HP was drained every second, and no matter how many potions Suho drank, it only barely slowed that down. Moreover, if he fell into the water, the amount and speed of HP drain increased tremendously in proportion to the depth. But this only applied to Suho, a living human. The debuff, death, had no effect on the shadow soldiers escorting Suho at that time. The reason was simple. They didn't have HP to lose in the first place. The shadow soldiers, who were already dead souls, maintained their existence with MP, Suho's magic power, not HP. Therefore, they were immortal as long as his magic power remained. They were an immortal army that wouldn't be eroded by the sea of the afterlife. But although the principle is different, demons are also a race that isn't eroded by the sea of the afterlife. Not all things could be compared to the game system, but if he had to find an analogy, the demon race also lived with MP rather than HP. In other words, the demons were fundamentally accustomed to spiritualization. Moreover, weren't they originally the residents of the Gap, the souls contaminated by the weeds that grew in the sea of the afterlife? Tracing back, the sea of the afterlife is practically the spiritual homeland of the demon race. Harmakan also subtly joined in the explanation. The demonic spirits were originally a sinister race that enjoyed experimenting with souls. Numerous wicked ideas were already popping up in his mind as he glanced at the demons gathered here. he licked his lips. Things like the evil spirit's armor. Heh, my hands are itching. If you leave it to this Harmacon, I will build the demon ship that you desire, master. However, it will take some time to construct something that can carry everyone here. Macon was confident that he could build anything as long as he had enough time and materials. Then, not to be outdone, Beru pushed Harmacon's face aside and added, "My liege, the demonic spirits are good, but there's also another race that's perfect for this. And as it happens, this time, I saw them too." Smirk. They grinned at each other. He already knew which race Beru was going to point out. People usually couldn't remember everything they saw as babies. But there were fragments of memories that occasionally surfaced. Among the souls of the mixed world that Suho pulled from the Sea of the Afterlife this time, there were a variety of races, not all of them strong and extraordinary. The truly powerful ones were sinking deeper, rejecting the shadow power because Suho's level was insufficient. But amidst those successfully extracted, there were quite a few races that Suho had seen in his father's shadow world when he was young. For example, bearded dwarves. Swoosh! At those words, shadow newcomers appeared from under Suho's feet. Beru's smiling eyes narrowed even further. You're exactly right. The bearded dwarf race, although their combat abilities are poor, are blacksmiths with exceptional talent in crafting. They saw them having bushy beards overflowing with black energy, those short but sturdy blacksmiths with thick bodies. But levels didn't matter for these guys, as he wasn't going to make them fight. The shadow dwarves had more fiery personalities than expected. Those with low soldier ranks couldn't speak, but those who could were voicing their opinions one after another. "Ha! You're going to build a ship to sail the Sea of the Afterlife. Krah! To think I'd be tasked with such an interesting job after dying." As soon as they heard Suho's objective, their bushy beards bristled in all directions with burning enthusiasm and fighting spirit. Their eyes sparkled like stars. "If you're in a hurry, is it really necessary to build it all here?" "That's right. We have enough materials, so how about building a lot of rafts and setting off right away? We can each ride on a raft and gradually expand it on the Sea of the Afterlife." "That's right. If the materials are weeds that grow there, we can procure them on site and grow the ship." "All right, let's build it right away." They rolled up their sleeves in earnest. Clank, clank, clank. Before he knew it, Suho's plan began to materialize before his eyes through their words and hands. "Hey, you demons, stop just standing there and carry this." "Uh-huh, what are you saving your strength for? Aren't you going to work?" The demons inadvertently became their assistants and were put to work. "But I'm the king." Asil was a little sullen. She suddenly realized that all the demons who were supposed to serve her as king had become servants of the dwarves. But apart from that, the crafting speed of the shadow dwarves was astonishing. Saw. Aha! Rafts are a piece of cake. It's just a matter of tying logs together. Master, it's complete. Just like that, in the blink of an eye, numerous rafts were completed before Suho. Ding, crafted item, Raft of the Afterlife. Acquired, Raft of the Afterlife crafting skill. Eventually, a line was added to the crafting skill section at the very end of Suho's skill window. Holy Water of Life, Raft of the Afterlife. When Suho looked at the Raft of the Afterlife, its description appeared. Acquisition difficulty, E. A crude raft made by weaving weeds that grow in the Sea of the Afterlife. Although its weak defense is a drawback, it is a ship that can move on the Sea of the Afterlife. This really works. Looking at the last line, it seemed like the plan was a success. For now, this should be enough to carry the demons and set off. Let's go see if it actually floats. They were so excited that their beards were bristling. The shadow dwarves were eager to see if the ship they built would actually float on the Sea of the Afterlife. But in the meantime, one of them showed a little more enthusiasm than the others. "Oh my, what should I do with this? I may have worked too hard on it because I had time left." Ding. Crafted item, Rowboat of the Afterlife. Raft of the Afterlife crafting skill is upgraded to Rowboat of the Afterlife. Ah! It's nothing much. I just made one to show you how we're going to gradually expand these rafts later. The other shadow dwarves glared at that sycophant who was flattering Suho while stroking his beard. His excuse was plausible, but anyone could see that he was just trying to show off. Who couldn't build a rowboat and had to make crude rafts? Wasn't the purpose to make as many as possible? The shadow dwarves gritted their teeth at that flatterer and continued their explanation to Suho. Anyway, we'll build a bigger and sturdier ship on the sea of the afterlife like that. To start, one of our kind and 10 demons to use as workers are enough to put on a raft. And until our ship has its own attack and defense capabilities, you can put soldiers in charge of combat on board. Once the warship is complete, even that won't be necessary. Should we also make cannons for the warship? The moment someone suddenly mentioned cannons, Harmakan appeared as if he had been waiting. If it's cannons for the demons to use, this servant of yours has already taken care of it. Flash! Harmakan spread his palms and unfolded a sinister magic circle. Hellsteel, a hard metal imbued with magic that can only be found in the demon world. He wasn't just playing around while the shadow dwarves were building the rafts. He was fulfilling his own ambitions behind the scenes to gain favor with Suho. Using this hellsteel, we can create cannons that gather and fire the magic power of the demon race master. Flash. Harmakan crafted item, demon cannon. Well, it's just a trivial skill. An invisible battle of nerves unfolded between Harmakan and the shadow dwarves. Watching them, Suho suddenly had a good idea. Wait. Then, if that's the case... Suho took out Kamish's wrath and showed them to the shadow dwarves, asking, "Can you guys fix this dagger too?" At that moment, the beards of all the shadow dwarves who saw Kamish's wrath bristled. A sword made from dragon's tooth? Chapter 253. Chapter 251. Acquisition difficulty. Type, dagger. Attack power 1/500. Such a precious treasure. It's damaged. The shadow dwarves trembled with shock and horror, their beards quivering. The most joyous and heartbreaking moments of their lives happened simultaneously. To think I would see a weapon made from a dragon's tooth in my lifetime. I finally got to see such a beautiful treasure after death. I'm glad I died. It's an honor to my family. But how many fierce battles did you go through with this to dull the blade so badly? The beards of the shadow dwarves, talking all at once, fluttered. It was truly amazing. For ordinary dwarves who weren't part of the shadow army, crafting something with dragon teeth would have been something only possible in their wildest dreams. Where and how would they even get dragon teeth in the first place? It wasn't like a passing dragon would generously pull out its fangs and give them away. Perhaps the only time dwarves could see dragon teeth in their lives was right before being devoured by one. But those ferocious things had actually appeared before their eyes, and even in the form of well-crafted daggers. Kaha! Magnificent! Truly magnificent. Even with the blade dulled like this, the sharpness is outstanding. This is a dragon's tooth. Keek! Enough with the chatter. Beru's shout made the shadow dwarves come to their senses. So can you fix it? When Suho asked again, they eagerly offered their opinions. Of course we can. If the blade is dull, we just need to sharpen it again. However, a dragon's tooth won't be sharpened with an ordinary whetstone. We need a hard whetstone. If you bring us a material harder than a dragon's tooth, we will do our best to repair it. Suho had a confused expression at their words. A material harder than dragon teeth? If there's something like that, can't I just use it to fight? Haha, you misunderstand. Not everything hard can be made into a weapon. The harder it is, the easier it is to break. But this dragon's tooth is hard, doesn't break, and has good mana sensitivity. The bearded dwarves were once again noisily praising the weapon. Beru clicked his tongue and advised, "They're like this, always so noisy, but they're excellent blacksmiths that can create anything if given the time and materials. And it just so happens that I know a material harder than a dragon's tooth." Beru had been following Sung Jinwoo for a long time, and had seen countless times how the blacksmiths of the army repaired his weapons and created stronger ones. There's a material harder than dragon teeth? Yes, there are many, but the easiest one to obtain now would be dragon bones. Come to think of it, it was a very simple principle. Dragon's teeth and bones were fundamentally the same material. If they used harder bones from different parts, it would be possible to sharpen the dulled blade of Kamish's wrath. The shadow dwarves were delighted at those words. Ooh, do you have dragon bones, master? Kra, as expected. Our master is an amazing person. No, not me. My mother has them. Suho, the unfilial son, suddenly wondered how his mother was doing. A while later, Flash, the king of demons, the monarch of gluttony, enters gate, sea of the afterlife, a sticky pitch-black sky, a boundless expanse of melting darkness. Splash. A small raft was launched onto it. Row. The shadow dwarf's command fell behind Isiel, and the 10 demons who boarded the raft together split into 2 sides and began to row vigorously. Splash. As the raft finally cut through the sticky black water and moved forward, the shadow dwarf cheered. All right. It's a success. The raft he built had successfully begun sailing on the sea of the afterlife. Oh, king of demons, choosing my raft over that shabby rowboat was a wise decision. The shadow dwarf approached the captain of this ship, Asil, who was silently staring ahead, and subtly flattered her. He was extremely pleased that she chose his raft over the upgraded version, the rowboat of the afterlife. The shadow dwarf gritted his teeth as he thought of his despicable kin who built the rowboat just to gain favor with the master. The rowboat might seem much sturdier now, but in the long run, it's right to start with a raft, because if you start with a wide base, you can build a much larger ship later. You're a quiet one, aren't you? The shadow dwarf was embarrassed as he received no response from Asil. Asil hadn't said a word since entering the sea of the afterlife, just staring straight ahead. Breathe in, breathe out. She quietly inhaled and exhaled. Debuff death. As expected, the death energy flowing in the sea of the afterlife didn't harm the demons, just as Beru said. It really feels like I've come home. This sticky, ominous air wasn't death to demons. Rather, it made them feel a cozy sensation, as if they had returned to the time before they were born. Not only Isil, but also the 10 demons who followed her felt the same way. However, there was a fine line between cozy and dizzy. Splash, this was the abyss. Unknown ripples were appearing here and there on the black surface. The creatures had already noticed the demon's arrival. Good, Isil finally smiled. The smirk of the one who became the demon king shone white in the abyss. Splash! It's the weeds! With the shadow dwarf's cry, numerous weeds sprang up from the sea around the raft, and hideous tentacles stretched out from all directions to grab the demons, clinging to the raft. They're trying to destroy the ship. Stop them! The shadow dwarf fussed, but the demons didn't rush. They were all survivors who endured the trial. And Isil was their king. We've confirmed that the ship floats. So, swish. Isil raised one hand to the sky and commanded, all demons, gather before me. The king of demons was here, and wherever the king was, that was the demon world. Hell's army. Flash, flash, flash. Hundreds of magic circles were created simultaneously around Isil's raft, which was under attack by the weeds. Those formations forcibly twisted the dimensional wall and summoned all the demons who pledged allegiance to the king to the sea of the afterlife. Flash, through those gates, countless rafts appeared all at once. Kick, 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 kick! Rafts of the afterlife, each carrying 10 demons. The weeds, witnessing that amazing sight, cheered and shook their tentacles. A terrible hunger welled up. Unable to bear that greed, the weeds stretched out their tentacles without hesitation. It was only natural. No matter how many demons there were, would they be more numerous than the weeds here? Besides, the demons didn't seem that strong individually. But there weren't just demons on the rafts. There was one shadow dwarf on each, and there were also escorts to protect them until the raft grew larger. Whoosh! The black shadows crouching on the raft stretched out in all directions. Numerous creepy legs touched the ground and rose. A massive body the size of a house with dozens of eyes, a hideous mouth, and a pair of giant pincers. Its identity was none other than the boss monster that Suho defeated and extracted in the sanctuary of the Fang Monarch, Tomb Spider Arachne. Among the creatures Suho retrieved from the Sea of the Afterlife this time, there were many spiritual bodies of magical beasts that were the same race, and they were some even stronger individuals than Arachne. Shadow Spider retrieve. Splash. Slash. Slash. Black spider webs spread out from the raft in all directions like a net. All right, sweep up all the materials. We need self-sufficiency. The corner of the raft is torn. Wrap the ship tightly with spiderwebs. As expected, it's perfect as an adhesive. The shadow dwarves were very excited. The demon's raft that appeared on the vast sea began to grow larger and larger. The tomb berserk dragons. In the middle of wasteland, where gray ashes were fluttering, the ribs of dragons that died during the war were buried. Cha-hae-in, sitting blankly on the giant dragon bone, turned her head at Circa's sudden call. We have contact from Suho. From my son? Cha-hae-in's eyes sparkled as she brushed back her messy hair and replied. The king of the snowfolk, the monarch of frost, uses skill, echo. Circa, the descendant of Silad, could communicate with the dead monarch through prayer. But despite calling it prayer, its actual use was more like a direct phone line to Suho. The king of the snowfolk, the monarch of frost, grumbles about the lack of respect for one's ancestors. Anyway, so Suho needs the dragon bones here? Cha-hae-in and Circa, having learned about Suho's situation through Silad, looked around with slightly awkward expressions. Will this be enough? I wonder. The dragon bones that had been left in this desolate land for a long time were severely decayed due to the aftermath of the war and the passage of time. Perhaps even more so than Kamish's wrath, which Suho used as a weapon. If the goal was to sharpen the blade, it seemed like these bones would be ground down first. But just in case, shall we look for the most intact ones? Let's do that. It's good timing since we have nothing to do. Cha-hae-in and Circa were still in the tomb berserk dragons because the shadow wyvern, Kaisel, needed to recover. As a result of that, they were receiving the necessary supplies from outside the gate and leisurely enjoying camping in the middle of this desolate dimension. But camping should have good scenery. In reality, it was more like staying in outdoor lodgings. Yawn. Kaisel, who had been curled up and sleeping next to them, suddenly stretched and spread his black wings wide as they energetically got up, but his size, Oh. Cha-hae-in and Circa's eyes suddenly sparkled. Kaisel had grown tremendously. A smile appeared on their lips. With this, we can bring them ourselves. The gift for her son, whom she hadn't seen in a long time, was decided to be dragon bones. Chapter 254. Chapter 252. Whoa! What is all this? Lim Do-gyun couldn't help but exclaim in shock. Thud, thud! Countless porters were bringing in a mountain of gifts into the Woojin Guild office right before his eyes. Yu Jinho, the CEO, smugly wiped his nose in front of the ever-growing pile of presents. Heh, I pulled some strings. It had been a while since he felt this way. Yu Jinho, setting aside his usual calm and intellectual CEO image for today, was fully enjoying the memories of his younger days. He couldn't help it. Seeing Sung Suho and Lim Do-gyun running the guild together in this office, he prepared naturally overlapped with his own youth spent with Sung Jinwoo and the Ajin Guild. So, seeing Lim Do-gyun, who was left alone in the office and taking care of things while Sung Suho was away on important business, made him feel a sense of camaraderie. Speaking of which, Vice President Lim Do-gyun? Yes! Keep your mouth shut and just listen. I'll give you a brief overview of the current situation. Lim Do-gyun, standing at attention at Yu Jinho's words, hurriedly pretended to zip his mouth shut. To receive a briefing directly from a remarkable person like CEO Yu Jinho, without going through anyone else. This wasn't just a simple matter. Embargo. It meant that it was a confidential and important issue that Yu Jinho had to address personally. First, let's start with what you already know. The national vote was confirmed as expected. There were no surprises. Suho's entry into North Korea was finally decided, but the repercussions were enormous. All the media, from the political to the economic sections, were in a frenzy. Breaking news. Hunter Suho's decision to enter North Korea. News, S-rank Hunter's declaration of full cooperation. Urgent, International Hunter Association's political cooperation begins. Politics. The president expresses his position to provide supplies to Association President Woo Jin-chul through this opportunity. While Suho was exploring the Sea of the Afterlife with Seo Jinwoo and sending the demons on rafts to search for the World Tree, many things were happening outside the gate. Yu Jinho was moving to help Suho in his own way. He resolved all the political and economic issues that were entangled with his entry into North Korea. By any means necessary, Remember this. Finishing his explanation, CEO Yoo Jinho's sharp gaze pierced Lim Do-gyun's eyes. If Suho wields a sword and defeats countless magical beasts, people like us have to use everything we have to take care of all the other miscellaneous tasks. This is a matter of speed. Yoo Jinho knew it well. If you're slow, you fall behind. To keep up with the speed at which people like Sung Jinwoo and Sung Suho were getting stronger, they had to support them at a tremendous pace. If you fall behind even for a moment, unnecessary miscellaneous tasks will pile up like bad stock and eventually hold Suho back. And if his growth is slowed down by troublesome things, for example international law or public opinion like this time, it will lead to a global loss and a crisis for Earth. Lim Do-gyun fully understood what Yoo Jinho, the veteran of support, was saying. True support wasn't done from behind, but from the front. It wasn't simply following behind, but clearing the path ahead that Suho wanted to take. That was the true role of the pillar supporting Woojin Guild, the vice president. In that sense, these are the gifts I personally squeezed out of the S-rank hunters. The news is saying it's full cooperation, but in reality, it's full-scale extortion. Ah, so it is an embargo. Lim Do-gyun ended up learning a tremendous truth that the public didn't know. This is the tyranny of a large corporation, a righteous bully. Snap. I'm going to do an unboxing now. Yoo Jinho's hands were covered with white gloves made of luxurious material, and with delicate movements like a tech YouTuber, he began to open the gifts that the porters had left one by one. Lim Do-gyun felt like he was going blind from the shiny lights leaking from within. Crazy. He could tell it was expensive equipment at a glance. Lim Do-gyun's jaw dropped. Is this the new longsword Kallion released by Mayas, and this is the Royal Series shield made by Master Grados? Smirk. A satisfied smile appeared on Yoo Jinho's lips. Yes, you know your weapons. A masterpiece transcends time and history. Memories were faint. In an era that no one remembered now, even in that forgotten history, there were luxury brands recognized by all hunters, and there were genius master craftsmen who personally crafted those items. Decades later, a world where they once again fought magical beasts with primitive weapons like swords and shields had arrived, but there was a clear difference from that time. Humanity's scientific power. Even though the master craftsmen have aged, technology has advanced many times over. This means that we can create much more delicate and durable weapons with the same materials. Yoo Jinho smiled with satisfaction, feeling that it was worth squeezing the large guilds as much as possible. How much is all this? Roughly 10 billion won, I guess. Gasp. Why are you so surprised? There are still items that haven't arrived yet. Lim Do-gyun was shocked. Expensive weapons made using magic stones and valuable materials worth hundreds of millions of won. These were treasures of tremendous value that could make a C-rank hunter B rank or higher, and a B rank hunter A rank. But will Suho take all of this to North Korea and use it? You can never have too many weapons. Even if Suho doesn't use them himself, it will be a great help just by equipping his soldiers with them. Ah, as expected. As expected from the head of a company. CEO Yoo Jinho's thoughts were on a different scale. He wondered why there were so many weapons, but the plan was to arm not only Suho, but the entire army he led. Besides, being expensive doesn't matter as long as they can protect Suho's precious life, even if he needs to use them as disposables. We can't provide any supplies once he crosses into North Korea. We need to make thorough preparations before departure. What a great mindset. Beru, who appeared just in time, grinned wickedly. As expected, he was taking care of things without even being asked. It was worth restoring his memories. Yoo Jinho suddenly handed Beru the smallest box among the numerous gifts and said, "Especially this. It was really hard to find." Beru's eyes narrowed in satisfaction as he recognized the item. It was really worth restoring his memories. The front line, Demilitarized Zone DMZ. This place, which once served as the border between South and North Korea, was an area known as the last paradise for wild animals on the Korean peninsula because it had been untouched by human hands for over 100 years. Hence the nicknames Primeval Forest or Natural Forest. Originally, this place had countless landmines buried under the grass. Soldiers greeted Suho as he arrived at the front line. The DMZ was a place where civilian access was strictly prohibited, surrounded by numerous landmines and barbed wire fences, but now it's prohibited for a completely different reason. In short, beyond the barbed wire fence was a wasteland. That day, all the landmines here exploded simultaneously. Captain Kim, who had been serving on the front line for 5 years, swallowed dryly as he recalled the horrific events of that day. To put it bluntly, the landmines didn't kill the magical beasts, but only enraged them. As a result, the sky was torn and the earth split open. This was no exaggeration. Suho followed Captain Kim's gaze beyond the barbed wire fence. If we were to classify the types of magical beasts, they were spirits. Spirits. Beings he had seen once in Silid's sanctuary. Only ice spirits lived there, but the types of spirits that rampaged beyond this barbed wire fence were diverse. The rampaging spirits caused earthquakes and flooded the boiling river. Some areas froze over, and in other places, trees sprouted from the cracked earth, forming a rainforest. The terrain itself has changed. Yes, beyond this barbed wire fence is literally hell. It makes us think it's fortunate that the two Koreas weren't unified before. Captain Kim let out a small sigh. As he explained, a wide river, as vast as the sea, flowed in front of the barbed wire fence leading to North Korea. Although he had been serving here for several years, it was a sight that never ceased to amaze him. The outside of the fence was so ordinary, but just a few steps beyond, a river was flowing, boiling with terrible heat like lava. Even at this moment, the sea was ordinarily flowing along the east-west direction of the Korean peninsula. But the river in this area, covered in blue mist, was boiling. It's much worse than I thought. Suho had seen this bizarre phenomenon several times before. Void Gate, a dimensional gap created by the overlapping and intertwining of numerous dungeons. This place was no longer just a field-type dungeon. It was practically a double dungeon on an enormous scale, dangerously dangerous. It's a miracle that people in our country can still live peacefully despite this area existing on the Korean peninsula, even though there were no casualties because it was originally uninhabited land. And that miracle was created by the efforts of one man, Woo Jin-chul. If Association President Woo Jin-chul hadn't sent hunters with numerous protection skills at the right time, our country would have probably become like North Korea, at least up to the Han River. Captain Kim, having finished his explanation, suddenly sensed the atmosphere surrounding Suho. The gazes of the soldiers guarding the barbed wire fence were all focused on him. I told them to be polite. These guys really... Captain Kim smiled bitterly, guessing the soldiers' thoughts. The emotions mixed in the gazes of the soldiers who had been guarding this place for 2 years were diverse, but they could be summarized in one sentence. So what can you do? The soldiers knew the reality of this place better than anyone. There was nothing an ordinary human could do in the face of this disaster-like phenomenon. Even when the great association president Woo Jin-chul and the strongest hunter, Choi Jong-in, came, it was the same. The only thing they accomplished was reducing the number of magical beasts coming down south. Of course, that alone was a remarkable achievement. As a result, South Korea was safe, wasn't it? But that was all. They succeeded in reducing the number of magical beasts, but they ultimately failed to restore the demilitarized zone, which had turned into a wasteland, to its original state. It was only natural, because this place had already been eroded. Beyond this, everything has already turned into the land of spirits. I don't know if you've ever fought spirits, but they not only cause weather changes. Rumble. Crash! Lightning struck the boiling river water. Unpredictable weather changes. And Kyow! Spirits directly possess wild animals and plants, creating mutant magical beasts. Tree-type magical beasts, large animals, even insects too small to be seen have turned into magical beasts. In short, this place is a land where nature itself has been completely transformed into magical beasts. Captain Kim wanted to give Suho, who came to go to North Korea, a strong warning. To be honest, he wanted to dissuade him. He couldn't understand why a young man with a bright future would volunteer to go to such a dangerous place. If you were lucky enough to awaken as an S-rank hunter, you should just stay in the South and rake in money. It's recklessness. It's bravado. From the soldier's perspective, Suho's decision to come to this dangerous place of his own free will was incomprehensible. But they wouldn't ever dream that Captain Kim's explanation, which was meant to caution Suho, was actually motivating him. That's good timing. The king of beasts, the Ang monarch, drools at the mention of many beasts. The queen of insects, the plague monarch, smacks her lips at the fact that there are many insects. Along with the excited reactions of the monarchs, Suho also had a triumphant smile. Nidhogg, the serpent that gnaws at the world tree. To face that powerful creature again, he needed to defeat the remaining 6 heads first. And the way to do that was to have the other successors properly inherit the primordial darkness. Just like Essil. I'll have to help Arsha and Grey grow this time. Crash. But was it his imagination? There was too much lightning, and on top of the hot air coming from the river, he felt a chill. Ooh, emergency, emergency. The soldiers guarding the outpost suddenly started screaming and making a fuss. Woo! The emergency siren sounded. The sky! Look at the sky! The soldiers' horrified gazes were pointing overhead. Crackle! Crash! Along with the thunder and lightning, a magical beast with giant wings was descending from the sky. A giant magical beast has appeared. Gather all the hunters. Captain Kim also panicked and grabbed his walkie-talkie at the sudden situation. But Suho was blankly looking up at the sky. Calm down, it's okay. He quietly stopped the soldier and said, with a slightly embarrassed expression, "That's just my mother." Chapter 255, Chapter 253. Suddenly, all hell broke loose. Will! Chaos erupted simultaneously across Korea. What's going on? What's happening? Emergency alert messages flooded everyone's cell phones. And whoosh, black shadow loomed over people walking on the streets. Pedestrians looked up at the sky without prompting and gasped in shock. Holy crap. What is that? Swoosh. Was it an airplane? A fighter jet? Nah! Magical beast. It's a flying magical beast. Ooh-wah! People's eyes widened. Screams erupted everywhere. A giant monster with large wings. It was flying over the city at terrifying speed, leaving a black trail. Magical beast appears over Seoul? Where is the flying magical beast headed? The Hunter Association fails to respond. What about the citizens' safety? Pictures of the black wyvern flooded portal sites in an instant. Even in that short time, someone must have chased its trail and frantically pressed the camera button on their phone. Fortunately, contrary to concerns, there were no casualties. The magical beast just flew past overhead at high speed. But this wasn't something that could be ignored. Even before the flying magical beast arrived on the Korean peninsula, emergency alarms were ringing in all hunter guilds and the Hunter Association in Korea. It's a magical beast attack. The type is a dragon, presumed to be specialized in flight. It's charging straight towards the Korean peninsula. It was like watching the Korea Meteorological Administration right before a typhoon. But the speed of that typhoon was way too fast. Find a way to stop it before it arrives. It's flying too high. It's too risky to have hunters fight it over the sea. How about shooting it down with a surface-to-air missile? Even if we hit it with a missile, it will be difficult to damage the magical beast. Who doesn't know that? At least try to slow it down. At this speed, it will arrive on the Korean peninsula before government approval is granted. There was simply no way. If they recklessly fired missiles over the city to shoot down the magical beast, it was clear that only the citizens would be put at risk. It seems like we can only respond once it lands. There's no chance of it just passing by, right? It has already arrived. Damn it! Chase it now! The moment the black wyvern arrived at the Korean peninsula, all the hunters in the association rushed out with their weapons, as if on cue. Which direction? And north. Let's go. Towards the north, following the black trail. But it wasn't a problem that could be solved by just anyone chasing after it. Only A rank or higher should follow. I want support from B rank healers or higher. The opponent was a wyvern. A dragon, no less. At least A rank. At this absurd speed, it's highly likely to be an S rank magical beast. If it's a magical beast specialized in flight, there's a chance its combat power is only A rank. It was a moment where everyone had to join forces, regardless of guilds. Contact the association. Tell them to send an emergency alert to all nearby hunters. It's a dragon raid. Dragon raid. The weight of that name was truly terrifying. They could only hope that there would be no casualties until the raid was safely over. "I'll go myself." As expected, the White Tiger Guild, which prioritized the safety of citizens, was the fastest to respond. Baek Yunho gritted his teeth and unleashed his magic power. Beast transformation, whoosh! White fur covered his entire body. A pure white trail was drawn as he ran down the road with all his might. At this rate, there might be news about a white magical beast appearing in the middle of the city. But Baek Yunho didn't care about anything. Swoosh! He gritted his teeth. The reason he was in a hurry wasn't just for the citizens' safety, but also, it's the direction where Miho is. The place where the black trail led happened to be where Baek Miho went early in the morning for an important event. Sung Suho's entry into North Korea. She was close to the association because she was tasked with escorting the cargo truck carrying the supplies that the government prepared for Association President Woo Jin-chul. Since there were a lot of supplies and many valuable pieces of equipment, she went to support the association in case of any unexpected situations. But an unknown magical beast was flying towards that very place? Could this be a coincidence? No way. Baek Yunho trusted his instincts. When he was a firefighter, how many lives had he saved with his sharp sense? Miho, please be safe. Dad will be there soon. Growl. The speed at which Baek Yunho ran through the city, his white mane fluttering, was dazzling. People, roads, cars, buildings, rivers, trees, mountains, mountains, mountains. The scenery that passed by him changed endlessly in an instant. This was the full speed of an S-rank hunter trying to save his daughter's life. Thud. He finally arrived. Before any other hunter, demilitarized zone rumble, crash. The bubbling river with thunderbolts striking above it. Miho, Baek Yunho roared. At the same time, a sharp light gleamed in the eyes of the beast as he quickly scanned the surroundings, looking for his daughter, Baek Miho, and traces of the black wyvern that flew here. Found it! It was the black wyvern. Just then, a ferocious magical beast accompanied by white frost and lightning was landing in front of the barbed wire fence. To stop that one creature, non-awakened soldiers were surrounding it, risking their lives, and standing awkwardly. Huh? Kind of flinch! The black wyvern suddenly opened its mouth wide and yawned languidly. In case it breathed fire, Baek Yunho instinctively jumped to the side, and he found Baek Miho, who was standing in front of a nearby truck, and blocked her. Miho, Dad's here. Just then, other hunters who arrived a short while after Baek Yunho also gathered. Here, we found the wyvern. The proud hunters who protected Korea. Even though they usually bickered due to their competitive spirit, they all united in times when the safety of citizens was at stake. Everyone, battle formation. Hunter Baek Yunho is here too. It's Hunter Baek. Without even taking a breath, everyone naturally formed a formation around the S-rank. The hunters, witnessing the true form of the black wyvern, surrounded it with determined expressions. But, groan. Something was strange. Despite being surrounded by hunters and soldiers in an instant, the black wyvern was calm. As if stretching, it spread its giant wings wide, then folded them neatly and curled up its body. And then it respectfully gathered its hideous front paws and prostrated itself on the ground. What the? Gulp. While everyone swallowed dryly, two people gracefully stepped down from the wyvern's back. Thud. At that moment, everyone's eyes were filled with a mixture of puzzlement and shock. Those two people were Cha-hae-in and Circa, whose faces weren't even properly captured on camera because the wyvern was too fast. Should we have flown higher? Circa muttered awkwardly and looked at her friend's face. Cha-hae-in had a very apologetic expression as she looked at the people surrounding them. Sorry, I thought no one would see us at that height. Cha-hae-in hurriedly bowed and apologized, her face flushed red. Was it because the only flying she had ever done was in the world of ice elves with blizzards? She had an expression that said she had caused the biggest disturbance of her life. But it didn't matter what Cha-hae-in said, the hunters gathered here couldn't hear anything. Oh my God, the shield held in someone's hand dropped to the ground. The wyvern, the dragon, brought people? Rumble. Crash! Everyone froze at the shocking sight that defied common sense. But then, Baek Yunho, the only S-rank hunter here and the oldest. Wait, could you be? While everyone was in a panic, only he recognized Cha-hae-in's face. No, there was no way he wouldn't recognize her. The last time he saw Cha-haen was about 20 years ago. That is, when he went to the wedding of his respected seniors, Sung Il-won's son. She was the bride that day. But that wasn't the problem. Even before going to that wedding, Baek Yoon-ho had known Cha-haen's face very well for a long time. No, the whole country knew her, because she was someone no Korean could ever forget. Athlete Cha-haen? Baek Yoon-ho finally exclaimed her name. The idol of the track and field world, Olympic gold medalist. As a pure Asian, she officially broke the 9-second barrier and set a new world record. The global sports star born in Korea. Cha-haen. That Cha-haen? While everyone was shocked, click, click, the shutters of the reporters' cameras gathered to cover Sung Suho's entry into North Korea clicked towards Cha-haen, who appeared like a comet riding a black wyvern. The sudden wyvern incident that swept across the Korean peninsula ended as a brief nuisance, but an even more shocking incident that would fill people with dopamine flooded the internet. The shocking identity of the awakened who appeared riding a wyvern. Cha-haen, what is the ex-national athlete's rank? The comment section exploded as well. But who is that Cha-haen anyway? Kids these days. How fleeting time is. How can you not know Cha-haen? Well, I guess teenagers weren't around back then. I really feel the generation gap. It can't be helped. It's already been 20 years since Cha-haen retired. Wow, but she still looks beautiful, even though she's 20 years older. Do you not age if you run fast? No, she's become even more elegant. So who is Cha-haen? If you ask who she is, one could say the brightest star. In terms of career, she's someone who achieved everything a track and field athlete could and retired. As if answering the comments from teenagers, information about Cha-haen soon began to fill the news. Information. Former national athlete Cha-haen's awards record. Information. Gold medalist Cha-haen's athletic career. Cha-haen after retirement. Information. National pride, the living legend. Bright Haen. Related searches. Cha-haen, Bright Haen, Olympics, number 100-meter sprint, track and field athlete, gold medalist, world record. Even though it's been 20 years, Cha-haen is still a true sports star from Korea. But as time passed, she was forgotten by the people because after retirement, she chose to live an ordinary life rather than being a celebrity or entertainer. Her daily life thereafter was kept completely confidential. Countless paparazzi tried to cover Cha-haen's life after retirement, but no one had succeeded yet. It was said that she had such skilled bodyguards that even the few pictures they managed to take were all obscured by black shadows. Moreover, since Cha-haen didn't even use social media, the mystery surrounding her deepened. In the end, when people recalled Cha-haen's last appearance, it was the interview video from the day she announced her retirement. As a senior who is retiring, could you share any special training methods for your juniors? Well, I don't think my method will work for everyone. I just ran hard to try and beat my boyfriend at least once, and before I knew it, I had set a new world record. Ah, you said your boyfriend is an ordinary public official, right? I've heard many interviews about how he always motivates you. Haha. The announcer smiled softly at Cha-haen's humble smile, still awkward in front of the camera, despite being so famous. Then now that you've set a new world record, you must have beaten your boyfriend. Yes, I won. Just once. It was a fluke, though. You're so humble. The announcer's smile deepened at Cha-haen's simple smile, who was cutely proud of herself while still being conscious of the camera. This simplicity was her charm, a living legend who never lost her beginner's mind and remained humble despite her tremendous achievements. Anyway, it's a shame that you're already retiring, but since you've set a new world record, what are your plans for the future? Since I won, I should get married. The shocking interview video where she announced her marriage along with her retirement. At that moment, men across the country were determined to find out who that person was, but the identity of that ordinary man, a public official, remained a secret, and according to a source close to them, the couple was solely focused on raising their child. All that was conveyed was that their only wish was for their child to live an ordinary life, a simple dream. This river looks too hot and dangerous. Mom will give you a ride. Ah, thank you, Mother. That wasn't ordinary at all. Chapter 256, Chapter 254. What? Those who heard the seemingly ordinary conversation between mother and son were simultaneously struck with shock. Did he just call Cha-hae-in mother? Hunter Sung Suho, is Cha-hae-in's son? A series of surprises. It felt like their brains were being melted by the overload of information. The fact that Cha-hae-in, who was said to be living an ordinary life, suddenly appeared, riding a black dragon, was already a huge incident. But now, it was revealed that she was the mother of Hunter Sung Suho, who was the hottest topic in Korea until this morning. This is a scoop. A scoop like this is a first-come, first-served battle. Flash! 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 The reporters began frantically taking photos, keeping an eye on each other. To capture the image of Sung Suho and Cha-hae-in facing each other, with the giant black dragon curled up in the background, faster than anyone else. Click, 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 click. At the same time, their fingers spread this tremendous news to the public at an incredible speed. Hunter Sung Suho's birth secret revealed. Exclusive, Cha-hae-in's son, Sung Suho. The news spread incredibly fast, and the public, already focused on the black dragon, reacted with shock in real time. What? Sung Suho is Cha-hae-in's son? This is crazy. Truly crazy. Sung Suho Cha-hae-in two-shot, comparison image. Wow, they really look alike. Seeing them side by side like this, he really takes after his mother. I can see Cha-hae-in in Sung Suho's features. No, really, how did we not notice this until now? Cha-hae-in was active 20 years ago. Wait, then how old is Cha-hae-in now? That face belongs to the mother of a son in his early 20s, not an older sister. Did she even age? Cha-hae-in, who appeared after 20 years, looked so good that one would think she was in her 30s. It was even more amazing when people saw her next to Sung Suho, who was in his early 20s, and compared them to each other. They really do look alike. If it weren't for Sung Suho's slightly sharper jawline and eyes, he would be a carbon copy of his mother. Maybe his eyes resemble his father? I'm really curious about his father's face now. Looking at Sung Suho's eyes, his father must be really handsome. Well, there's no way Bright Hae-in would have married an ordinary man. Was it his looks? Yes, I knew something was up when she suddenly said she was marrying an ordinary public official. The reaction was heated. No matter how much the river beyond the barbed wire fence bubbled like lava, the public's interest after hearing the news far surpassed that heat. Perhaps there was no other day as rewarding in the lives of reporters as today. Because the scoop wasn't over yet. Miss Cha-hae-in, I apologize for interrupting. Just then, a man suddenly intervened between Sung Suho and Cha-hae-in. I am team leader Han Jae-yuk of the Hunter Association. As it happened, the association staff were here to transport the supplies to be delivered to Association President Woo Jin-chul. Team leader Han Jae-yuk borrowed a magic power measuring device from the military unit here and politely handed it to Cha-hae-in. Looking at the records, it seems you haven't registered as a hunter yet. If you have awakened, could I request a magic power measurement? Ah! Everyone's ears perked up. Seeing the numerous reporters' eyes sparkling, team leader Han Jae-hyuk carefully spoke again. Of course, if you find this situation uncomfortable, you can do it another day. If you want it to be private, we can arrange that. But it's difficult to allow you to take your son, Hunter Sung Suho, across this barbed wire fence on this black dragon. Team leader Han Jae-yuk had to choose his words carefully. In fact, it was quite rude to publicly request a hunter's personal information in a place with so many reporters, especially since the person in question was Cha-hae-in, who was admired and supported by the entire nation. But the association couldn't help it. To enter North Korea, you must go through a national vote, just like your son, Hunter Sung Suho. Moreover, it would be a violation of international law for someone who isn't even registered as a hunter to cross this barbed wire fence. Besides, while speaking, team leader Han Jae-hyuk's gaze glanced at the black dragon yawning behind Cha-hae-in and closed his mouth. The public's right to know was a matter for reporters, but managing the awakened was the role of the association. Even though the sudden dragon raid ended as a brief event, nothing changed. From the association's perspective, Cha-hae-in was still a suspicious person who arrived on the Korean peninsula from across the sea riding this black dragon. There's no departure record, I don't know when athlete Cha Hae-in left Korea, where she's been, and what she's been doing. All of that was subject to investigation from the association's perspective. But at the same time, because the person in question was Cha Hae-in, team leader Han Jae-yuk was extremely cautious with his words. Even though 20 years had passed since her retirement, countless citizens who remembered Cha Hae-in from that time still had a strong fondness for her. The so-called immunity from criticism, especially in front of so many reporters, if he dared to be even slightly rude to Cha Hae-in, he could be criticized by the entire nation. He was even afraid to imagine what kind of terror he would face from the public if he used the term villain. But fortunately, she fully understood his position and nodded obediently. Yes, I understand. I'll take the magic power measurement right away. It's fine if the results are public. This kind of attention was also a first in a very long time. For Cha Hae-in's personality, being this exposed to public attention was burdensome no matter how old she got. But discomfort aside, it was something she was used to. From her teens to her 20s, she lived a life receiving this kind of public attention throughout her career as an athlete. Fortunately, after retirement, she was able to return to an ordinary life that suited her personality, but the process wasn't easy. His help was crucial. Thanks to her husband, using shadow soldiers to completely block the paparazzi, she was able to live a truly quiet daily life. Well, actually, it wasn't that quiet. Raising a child was so hard. A faint smile appeared on Cha Hae-in's lips as she reminisced about the past days. It was hard, but looking back, it was also a fond memory, wasn't it? But now Suho has grown up well, and since the world had returned to this dangerous state, she couldn't just cling to her desire for an ordinary life forever. Yes, 20 years is enough to enjoy it, an ordinary life. It's time to use my power to protect the ordinary lives of others, like before. Suddenly, Cha Hae-in's calm eyes changed, and she placed her hand on the magic power measuring device that team leader Han Jae-yuk handed her without hesitation. Flash! A dazzling light emanated from the instrument. And shrank. There were no surprises. Team leader Han Jae-yuk swallowed dryly and announced the measurement results in front of everyone. Congratulations on awakening as an S rank, Hunter Cha Hae-in. Flash! 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 As soon as he finished speaking, the reporters began frantically flashing their cameras at Cha Hae-in as if in a trance. Just like when she became a gold medalist 20 years ago. A new S rank awakened in Korea. Urgent. Former national athlete Cha Hae-in confirmed as S rank. Ah! But Cha Hae-in didn't stop there. The fact that she set a new world record by diligently running to try and beat her boyfriend, that was truly embarrassing, and that was why she could be even more humble. But that was that. Now that she had returned as S-rank hunter Cha Hae-in, not the gold medalist Cha Hae-in from a peaceful world, she knew her role and what she had to do very well. Therefore, looking directly at all the reporters and their cameras, he continued speaking with a slightly embarrassed but brazen expression. I know it's a violation of international law, but I'll just give my son a ride to North Korea. What? For a moment, all the hunters and reporters, including team leader Han Jae-yuk, couldn't understand what they had just heard. Kaisel, let's go. And they blankly watched as the giant black dragon spread its wings before them, and Cha Hae-in, who skillfully climbed onto its back, reached out her hand to Suho. But suddenly, wait! Miss Cha Hae-in, no, Hunter Cha Hae-in, it's a violation of international law. You have to go through a national vote. Belatedly realizing the situation, people rushed towards Cha Hae-in, who had boarded Kaisel, to stop her. But she just smiled at them and replied, Don't worry, I'll just drop him off and come back soon. I'll pay any penalty or fine after that. I have to protect the country in my son's place. No, wait. You can't act so recklessly. Oh my, Suho, why aren't you getting on? Despite Cha Hae-in's call, Suho himself remained on the ground instead of boarding Kaisel. People were greatly relieved by that sensible behavior. Yes, that's right. They couldn't help but admire how well her son had grown. He was abiding by the hunter law with common sense. But of course, they were mistaken. Ah, mother, just a moment. Suho was running in the opposite direction, not towards her, but to Baek Miho. Huh? Baek Yunho, who had been guarding his daughter, faltered as Suho approached. What? Why are you suddenly coming this way? Hunter Sung Suho? Baek Miho was also flustered and at a loss for words as Suho approached. Oh my, you must be Yunho's daughter. Chahayan's eyes sparkled as she saw the father and daughter from atop Kaizel. But Suho's objective wasn't Baek Miho or Baek Yunho, it was the thing behind them. The supplies that she had escorted here early in the morning. There was a cargo truck with supplies provided by the government to Association President Woo Jinchul in North Korea. The original plan was to load the entire truck onto a military helicopter and cross this boiling river, and then Suho would personally drive that truck to where Association President Woo Jinchul was. That was what the government and the association asked Suho to do. But Beru. Yes, my liege. Suho's plan was a little different. His shadow was already covering the entire cargo truck. Put it all in the shadow dungeon. Whoosh! At that moment, Suho's shadow swallowed the entire cargo truck. He turned around without hesitation and climbed onto Kaisel's back. Let's go, mother. At that moment, another scoop was added. Chapter 257. Chapter 255. Swoosh! A black shadow cut through the wind. 3 figures were riding atop the wyvern Kaisel, flying like a ray of darkness through the hazy steam. Sung Suho, Chahayan, and Circa. The boiling hot river water passed beneath them, but before the warmth could even reach them, the river was already far behind. Thanks to Mother, we crossed comfortably. I need to get at least 1 wyvern as a soldier instead of clumsy dragonids. Or I should raise Ragnar somehow. The Dragon King, the monarch of destruction, nonchalantly perks up his ears. Suho. Chahayan looked back at her son and asked, Since we've already crossed the border, shall I take you straight to where Mr. Woo Jinchul is? Suho couldn't help but chuckle at his mother's casual tone. Just from her words, it sounded like she was offering to drop him off at the academy on the way to the market. But her car was too extraordinary for that, to the point of wrecking everyday life. Just by appearing, she drew the attention of the entire nation. Recalling the reporters who were shocked to see Chahayan earlier, Suho thought about his mother's prime again. I knew that Mother was a national-level athlete in the past, but she seems to have been much more famous than I thought. Of course, he had heard several times that his mother was really successful in her time. But as her son, how much could he relate to that? Especially since it was something that happened before he was even born. From Suho's perspective, 20 years ago was a distant past, just like the story of how his parents met and dated before marriage. But where is Mr. Woo Jinchul? The association gave me the most recent coordinates they received. While Suho was answering Chahayan's question, Chahayan, Circa, who had been silent since crossing into North Korea, suddenly called out, What's wrong? Chahayan looked back at Circa. This place is strange. She was looking down at the ground with a scary expression, rubbing her arms. The spirits living here, they don't seem right. Don't tell me. Here too. Chahayan's face hardened at Circa's words. They had experienced rampaging spirits before, hadn't they? Facade Island. The ice spirits of the Echo Forest living in the sanctuary of the Ice Elves. What was the fundamental reason why the ice spirits, who should have been living peacefully in the sanctuary, suddenly went berserk and rampaged? Beru also gritted his teeth, staring ahead with narrowed eyes. The energy of Itarim is spread widely across this land. As Beru said, after crossing the hot river, the blue mist from the outer universe was heavily concentrated throughout this vast North Korean land. The density was higher than in any place he had seen before. In some ways, even beating the Loktak field. At least India still has a functioning government, but North Korea doesn't even have that. If we leave this place as it is, in the worst case, a huge void gate could open on this land. Perhaps it has already begun. Suho felt the gravity of the situation. Mother, I think we need to put out the urgent fire first. Yes, let's take care of the field we see before going to Mr. Woo Jinchul. Chahayan also nodded with a serious expression. Since they had the coordinates, finding the association president wouldn't take long. The bigger problem was the blue mist area so concentrated that it was visibly forming clumps. In any case, Woo Jinchul's purpose for coming to North Korea was to rectify this phenomenon, so the order didn't matter. Kaisel, let's go down. But when the wyvern lowered its altitude just slightly, caw, 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 caw! The spirits wandering in the air immediately attacked them. They're wild animals devoured by spirits, Circa shouted urgently. It's similar to the ice golems that appeared in our sanctuary. As expected, Bliss also has. Before she could even finish her sentence, their entire vision was suddenly covered with numerous birds. Swoosh! As Circa said, countless eagles, possessed by the rampaging fire spirits, charged recklessly with their bodies engulfed in flames. Their blazing wings were like that of a phoenix. In the case of the crows possessed by wind spirits, every flap of their wings unleashed sharp wind blades that tore through the air. But so what? They must be crazy. How dare they come here without fear? Beru openly mocked them. This was the problem with those who went berserk. Mere birds daring to attack a wyvern? There was no need to even use mana against these guys. Kaisel opened its mouth wide and roared at them. Boom, boom. Air cannons erupted from its mouth in a straight line and swept over them. Along the path of that wind, bird bodies exploded like balloons. But Chahayan scolded Kaisel instead. Kaisel, you can't do that. If you kill them, Suho won't get any experience points. Kaisel, about to open its mouth fiercely again, quickly dropped its snout with a sullen expression. But Chahayan was a firm mother serious about her child's education. Suho? Mother? Suho's eyes instinctively twitched at his mother's gentle voice. He knew what this was. It was like the night before an exam. Go do your best. Thud. Chahayan's hand pushed Suho's back without hesitation, from high up in the sky, into the middle of the still numerous spirit birds. No moth. How could she do this to him? While Suho fell helplessly, his mother's gentle smile as she waved at him gradually grew distant. The story of lions throwing their cubs off cliffs to raise them strong suddenly flashed through his mind. But this is too high. Even lions would probably shake their heads if they saw this. But now, instead of feeling bitter, he had to move to survive. Ruler's authority. Thump! Although he was momentarily surprised, Suho skillfully stepped on the air and slowed his fall. At the same time, Kamish's wrath daggers were grasped in both his hands. Using skill, Storm of Black Flames. Flare! Rumble! Keek! Flame Eagle has been defeated. Flame Eagle has been defeated. Windblade Crow has been defeated. Crow has been defeated. The forms of the spirit birds, helplessly dying from the black flame, scattered as ashes in the air. Even the flame eagles, although they were of the same fire attribute, they couldn't compare to the flames of destruction. Honestly, they don't seem like they'll give me a lot of experience points, but I like that there are a lot of them. There were easily thousands of them at a glance. It was hard to even count. It seemed like all the birds in the area flocked here after seeing an unfamiliar creature invade their territory. Whoosh! My liege! Just then, Beru, who flew towards the falling Suho, relayed Chahayan's words. She says to catch them all before you hit the ground. She says she'll give you dragon bones as allowance if you succeed. Seriously. Suho finally burst into laughter. You were going to give them to me anyway. And his eyes changed. Slash! His dagger cut through the body of a flame eagle that recklessly attacked from the side. And, arise! Shadow extraction successful. Nike. His hand grabbed the shadow eagle's leg, and it glided with its black steam-emitting wings spread wide. Suho, now soaring towards the area crowded with spirit-possessed birds, shouted, All those with wings, come out! Whoosh! At that moment, the shadow soldiers came out as if they had been waiting. Don't forget, the loyal subject you can trust in critical moments is me. Among them, Lee Minsung, no, the shadow lancer Kuei, smiled proudly and raised his spear enthusiastically. Follow me, everyone. Swoosh! Led by Kuei, numerous shadow lancers shot towards the birds possessed by spirits like arrows. At the same time, the shadow dragonids, commanded by Sita, also appeared and began to mercilessly slaughter the spirits. In the midst of that battle, Suho leisurely glided and ordered the shadow eagle, Guide me to the gate you spirits came out of. Craw! The shadow eagle immediately understood Suho's order and changed direction. Oh my! Chahayan's eyes sparkled as she saw that from above. You've become quite proficient in battle. If that's proficient, he seems incredibly stronger than the last time we saw him. Circa looked at Chahayan with a dumbfounded expression. But she once was the vice guildmaster of the #1 guild in Korea, the Hunters, in a forgotten time, and the strongest purely human S-rank hunter in Korea. Moreover, she had seen the battles of the true Shadow Monarch, Sung Jinwoo, several times up close, so her standards were inevitably high. Kaisel, let's follow him. Kaisel followed Suho at Chahayan's words, and Circa's expression gradually hardened. The spirit's energy is getting stronger. You're right. Even at the first glance, it seems like we've come to the right place. Whoosh! Cutting through the fluttering blue mist, something absurd was waiting right where the Shadow Eagle led Suho. What is that? A city. A giant city surrounded by blue mist existed there, but the problem was that its appearance and atmosphere didn't seem North Korean at all. Is this really North Korea? Suho, gliding with the Shadow Eagle, saw the city up close, and his eyes sharpened. A barrier? A transparent hemispherical barrier surrounded the city. Chapter 258, Chapter 256. It was a truly strange sight. Was this really North Korea? No, was this even Earth? The sight of the city being revealed as the blue mist cleared was so outlandish that it surprised everyone. The green city, covered in a dome-shaped transparent barrier, was truly beautiful, yet alien at the same time. A sense of disconnect from reality. The first thing they saw was a giant old tree standing tall in the center. Of course, it wasn't as big as the World Tree, but it was enormous enough to remind them of it. The intricate branches and lush leaves covered the city like a roof, and below that, numerous large trees, shaped like buildings, formed the vast cityscape. Looking at the windows dotting the tree trunks, it didn't seem like they were merely imitating buildings in appearance. Don't tell me that's... Circa blinked and muttered, clinging tightly to Chahayan's clothes. Why? Do you know something? Chahayan looked back at Circa. If I'm right, that's Elvenwood. Elvenwood? Chahayan tilted her head. Circa muttered with an expression of disbelief, even as she looked at the city. I heard about it from the village elders when I was young. Elvenwood, a village where high elves live, located somewhere in the world. High elves? Whoosh! Even as they conversed, Kaisel had already reached the outskirts of the city, and seeing Suho, who was gliding in front, turn around and come back towards them, they slowed down and waited for him in the air. Elvenwood? You're saying that's a city where high elves live? You have good ears. Suho had already arrived in front of Circa. Even though battles between shadow soldiers and birds possessed by spirits were still raging all around, Suho had eavesdropped on their conversation. What's a high elf? High elves are a higher tribe than us ice elves. If I'm the guardian of our tribe, high elves are all guardian level. What? All guardian level? Suho's eyes sparkled, but Circa had a slightly unsure expression. Yes, but I only heard about it from the elders, so I'm not sure. High elves are a tribe that's only spoken of in legends, even among us elves. Silad, do you know anything? Suho directly summoned the monarch, who would surely know more than Circa, or the elders who told her about high elves, and asked. King of the Snowfolk and the Monarch of Frost, strokes his chin and acts all high and mighty. King of the Snowfolk and the Monarch of Frost says that high elves are a gathering of losers who failed to become monarchs. Losers who failed to become monarchs? Suho tilted his head at the strange expression. That makes it sound like high elves are just a rank below monarchs. Were you a high elf too, Siled? King of the Snowfolk and the Monarch of Frost nods. King of the Snowfolk and the Monarch of Frost says that he is the only one among the ice elves who ascended to become a high elf, the king who rules and governs all ice spirits. Circa was shocked by Silad's words. Then what about me? What am I? A nobody. Circa's expression hardened like stone at Beru's sudden interjection. She had always thought that she was the only descendant of the monarch. But if the high elves, who were only known in legends, existed in that city, what would happen to her position? But my liege, something is strange. Beru added, in the past, that is, during the war between the rulers and monarchs, I never met the high elves. That's certainly strange. Wasn't that war something all races participated in with their lives at stake? It was certainly abnormal. Beru loved fighting and was a vanguard actively participating in all battles. A race that even he had never encountered? King of the Snowfolk and the Monarch of Frost smiles faintly and says, it's understandable for those guys. king of the snowfolk and the monarch of frost, says that high elves are those who want to become monarchs, but they are all cowards who want the current monarch to die more than anyone else. Ah, so they didn't participate in the war and hid because they could only become the monarch if the previous one died, even despite the fact that their race was being destroyed. Hearing this, he couldn't help but feel a strange mixture of understanding and confusion. After thinking for a moment, Suho decided, let's enter the city first. I'll have to meet them to know what kind of guys they are. The city was right in front of them, and it seemed like the battle in the sky could be left to the soldiers. Mother, let's go down together. All right, Kaisel, can you drop us off and rest in my shadow for a while? Chahayan nodded and gently patted Circa, who still was in shock. It's okay. No matter what anyone says, you're the descendant of the monarch chosen directly by Silad. Chahayan felt bad that her words didn't seem to be of much comfort. While living with the Ice Elves for the past few years, she was the one who constantly watched Circa from the closest distance. That's why she knew better than anyone how much she struggled to protect the tribe with her small and frail body. Therefore, it will really be okay, Circa. Pat pat, Circa, with her small back, covered in rich silver hair, looked like a frightened, cowering hamster, and it pained her heart. Suho actually had a real plan as he entered the Green City, presumed to be Elvenwood. This is good. It's a chance to help Circa grow. First of all, Suho didn't care what kind of guys the High Elves were. If they're enemies, I'll just kill them. They were all experience points anyway. That was the biggest reason he came to North Korea. It would be perfect to kill, then turn them into shadow soldiers, and have Circa educate those to become proper High Elves. King of the Snowfolk and the Monarch of Frost smiles wickedly and says it's a very wise plan. Don't smile like that. It makes me feel like a villain too. King of the Snowfolk and the Monarch of Frost tilts his head. But he truly didn't feel any sympathy for the High Elves. No matter how much they wanted to become the next monarch, they were just cowards who hid until the moment their race was destroyed. Beru also gritted his teeth. Those with power should rightfully fulfill their responsibilities, and if they had been defeated honorably and joined the Shadow Army, how much help would they have been to Master in the war against Itarim? It was then, welcome to Elvenwood, son of Shadow. Huh? The moment Suho and his party entered the Green City, tall elves over 2 meters in height greeted them with warm smiles. Leaving Circa, who was intimidated, aside, Suho and Cha Hae-in glared at them with wary eyes. Son of Shadow? You know my identity? At Suho's killing intent, the old elf standing in the middle pointed outside the city with a troubled expression. How could we not know? If you intended to hide your identity, you should have done something about those shadow soldiers. Ah, Suho was a little embarrassed. Outside the city, his shadow soldiers were still busy hunting birds. Level up. There were even enough of them to level up. The elves who came to greet Suho looked disgusted at the sight. But they didn't seem scared. They don't seem to want to fight. My liege, I haven't felt Itarim's energy since we entered. It seems to be the influence of the shield covering this city. I'll analyze what kind of barrier it is. Harmakan also appeared in his small form and whispered in Suho's ear. As he said, this giant dome-shaped barrier was blocking the thick blue mist outside the city from entering. What is this barrier? Huh, you seem to have a lot of questions. I'll tell you everything, so could you please withdraw your killing intent a little? I can endure it, but the young ones seem to be struggling. Suho obediently withdrew his killing intent at those words. Even while receiving it head-on, the old elf who stepped forward maintained a benevolent smile. He didn't seem scared or flinch at all, so it was unclear whether he was confident in his strength or had no intent, of fighting at all. Suho glanced up and checked the name tags floating above their heads. Unidentifiable? Does that mean it's a race the system can't interpret? Or, Suho scanned their appearance with suspicious eyes. Like their ice brethren, the appearance of the High Elves here was also fundamentally gorgeous. Handsome men and beautiful women, even the elderly had attractive and charming appearances. But there was one noticeable difference, the pair of horns growing from their heads. At first glance, they looked like deer antlers, but their material seemed unusual. They look unique. Are those horns or branches growing from your heads? There's no point in distinguishing between them. Even if we're fundamentally the same elves, our appearance changes depending on where we live. It's common knowledge for us, but a tribe that lives in the same place all their lives might not be aware of that fact. The old elf, answering with a chuckle, glanced at Circa. By the way, it's been a while since I've seen Silad's bloodline. As you may or may not know, we are nomads who wander around, looking for good places to live, so we don't often go to cold regions. Chahayan hid the intimidated Circa behind her back and asked, "Are you high elves?" "Yes. My name is Forest. We high elves don't have a separate chieftain, but I'm the oldest, so I lead everyone." "But you guys, what happened to your eyes?" Besides the horns, there was something he was most curious about from the beginning. All the high elves in Elvenwood, without exception, had their eyes covered with green blindfolds. Eyes. At Chahayan's question, the old elf Forest's lips turned downwards for the first time. He answered calmly, "What good are they? We plucked out the eyes that only watched as our race perished." "Anyway, welcome. I'll show you around our village." Chapter 259, Chapter 257, How is it? Forrest suddenly asked Suho and his party for their impressions. No one answered. Forrest wasn't really curious about the answer either. He already knew, even without them saying anything. "Isn't it beautiful?" Suho and his party were currently touring Elvenwood, guided by the high elves. Suho's impression flowed from his mouth. "Honestly, it's beyond that." "Huh, thank you." A smile appeared on Forrest's lips at Suho's sincere answer. The other high elves walking with him also had proud smiles on their faces. Elvenwood. This green city where the high elves lived was more than just beautiful. How could the inside and outside be so different with just a giant transparent barrier between them? A fierce battle was still raging beyond the barrier, but within, a world that seemed to exist only in fairy tales unfolded. The fresh, green lawn cushioned their feet with every step. Lush trees lined the path on both sides. "These trees are the houses we live in." As he said, each tree had large doors and windows with high elves coming and going. Suho asked, "Did you build these structures yourselves? With magic?" "It's not something grand like magic, just harmony." "Harmony?" When Suho tilted his head at the strange answer, Forrest spread his hands with a knowing smile. And then something amazing happened. Rustle. Following his touch, colorful flowers popped out from the lush lawn and bloomed. Even though the air was still, the stems swayed as if waving to him. A warm smile appeared on Forrest's lips as he received that greeting. Even without eyes, it was as if he could actually see them. "See? Everything in our village was created thanks to our harmony with the spirits. As I said, we are nomads who wander without a destination. But wherever we settle, the spirits come forward and prepare a place for us to live. It's truly harmonious." "Spirit magic?" Forrest's words stopped for a moment at Circa's sudden question. He looked back and smiled kindly. "Huh, calling it spirit magic. I also went through that phase before becoming a high elf. It was so long ago that I hardly remember." Circa's eyes welled up a little at his tone, which was like that of an adult talking to a baby. But it wasn't a good time to argue. A small stream appeared before them, and Forrest stepped onto it without hesitation. Rustle. Tree branches sprouted from under his feet and intertwined. A rainbow-shaped bridge across the stream was created in an instant. Forrest naturally stepped on it and went across. Circa's eyes widened. It wasn't spirit magic. She couldn't feel any mana flow during the bridge's creation. Forrest continued speaking like a grandfather reciting an old tale to his granddaughter. "See? Young elf who follows Silad. For your tribe, living in the snowy fields all their lives, spirits would have always been a harsh cold that you had to fight and endure to survive. But that's quite different from the truth. Since ancient times, we elves were not a race that fought against nature, but a race that lived in harmony with it, and the numerous spirits born from nature were our friends and kin." Circa couldn't say anything. She felt the weight and experience of time in Forrest's words, so she finally nodded and politely asked him for advice. "How can I become a high elf?" "Aha!" Forrest burst into laughter, instead of answering. The other high elves around him also laughed. To ask such a question, trying to run before you can walk. Haha, not everyone can become a high elf just because they want to. There's no special method or trick. As Circa made a sullen face at being suddenly ridiculed, a luscious fruit sprouted from the end of a branch next to her. Forrest handed it to Circa. Here, eat this. This child wants to give you a present because you're cute. Circa inadvertently received the fruit with both hands. The high elves around her began to offer words of advice. This is it. It's not something you achieve through effort. You have to be chosen by the Spearhouse. It's chosen? Forrest nodded at Circa's question. Yes, it's not something that comes with effort. For an ordinary elf to become a high elf is a blessing from the spirits. Here, try it. The gifts from the spirits are sweeter than any other fruit. Just as Circa was about to put the fruit in her mouth, don't eat that. Suddenly, Chahayan's hand appeared and snatched the fruit from her. Why? Circa, bewildered at having the treat taken away, looked up at Chahayan. You shouldn't eat food that strangers give you. For some reason, Chahayan was looking at Forrest with a slightly angry expression. He could sense that despite not being able to see, and assumed an awkward expression. The fruits that the spirits give are not dangerous to elves at all. Rather, they're a tonic that makes you healthier and more beautiful. Thank you for your kindness, but it's up to the guardian to decide what to feed a child. Guardian? Forrest had a bewildered expression, looking like he just had heard something very strange. Aren't you human? Why is a human acting as a guardian for an elf? What does race matter? Circa is like a daughter to me. That's absurd. Even if that child isn't a high elf, she wouldn't need protection from a human. Forrest, from beyond the green blindfold, stared intently at Chahayan. Then he glanced at Circa again and tilted his head. Come to think of it, I didn't ask. Just who are you? Forrest was finally curious about Chahayan's identity. He already knew that the child of Shadow, Sung Suho, was the Shadow Monarch's offspring. He also knew that Circa was a descendant of the Monarch of Frost. But Chahayan, who was between them, was just an ordinary human, so he didn't pay much attention to her. But how dare a mere human take away the gift of the spirits from a descendant of the Monarch of Frost? The fact that Circa seemed to think it was natural was also incomprehensible. I am. Just as Chahayan was about to reply, don't answer that. Suho's hand suddenly stopped her. You shouldn't carelessly give out personal information to just anyone, especially to suspicious guys like them. Suho's eyes, which had been leisurely looking around Elvenwood like a tourist, were now filled with hostility. Suho? Chahayan's gaze fell on the back of Suho's head. Well done. If it's revealed that Miss Chahayan is Master's lover, it will only endanger her. Of course, it will eventually be known, but there's no need for us to say it first. Beru's small face suddenly appeared and whispered in a voice that the elves couldn't hear. Then he glared at Forrest and the high elves with narrowed eyes and climbed onto Suho's shoulder. Bzzz! A flying insect suddenly flew from somewhere and landed on Suho's other shoulder. It was a bee with yellow and black stripes. Forrest's expression suddenly hardened when he saw the insect. It was natural for the child of Shadow to have shadow soldiers around him, but that flying insect wasn't a shadow soldier. Why are you reacting like that? Have you never seen a bug before? Suho smirked at Forrest, but contrary to his tone, Suho's entire body was tense and ready. Forrest and the other high elves' expressions hardened even more. Wait, don't tell me you. Well, I guess you might have never seen it before. I haven't noticed a single insect in Elvenwood so far. It's quite strange. No insects living in a place full of flowers and trees. Even as he spoke, more and more bees were gathering on Suho's shoulder, and they began to transform into the form of a beautiful woman. The Plague Monarch? How is the Queen of Insects here? That's a good title. I'm destined to become that soon. Queen Bee Arsha responded with a delighted smile to their openly flustered reactions. She looked at Suho again and pointed at the lush trees around them, at the numerous buildings where the high elves lived. As expected, there are humans trapped in the basement of those buildings. As soon as she finished speaking, the expressions on the faces of the high elves, smiling kindly until now, disappeared, turning into those of soulless puppets. Ah, dear, so it has come to this, Forrest muttered in a troubled voice. Whoosh! A chilling silence fell. The warm and cozy wind that was swirling within Elvenwood had stopped. The lush leaves withered and turned desolate at a rapid pace. The paradise on earth turned into a barren wasteland in an instant. It would have been easier for everyone if you had just passed by quietly. Really? I had a feeling it would be like this. Slash, slash, slash! Kamish's wrath appeared in Suho's hands. 2 daggers slashed at one of the tree buildings, creating black trails. Crack! And what was revealed inside? Save! Ugh! The screams of people dying, bound by tree roots, filled the place. Oh my god. Circa's eyes widened at the shocking sight. On the other hand, Cha-Hain, who hadn't let her guard down even for a moment since entering this place, already had Baran's longsword in her hand. And Suho, who had Arsha scout the surroundings early on, was also ready for battle. They said high elves were a gathering of losers who failed to become monarchs. What the hell were you doing here? Losers. That's an interesting expression, child of shadow. Losers? Are you in a position to say that to us? Losers? You're the one who can never become a monarch unless your father dies. What? Why are you suddenly so angry? Did I hit a nerve? Whoosh! A ferocious energy erupted from the high elves, whose expressions disappeared in an instant, filling Elvenwood. As if to confront it, the shadow that spread from under Suho's feet also spread on the ground, using skill Monarch's domain. In this tense situation, where a fight could break out at any moment, Circa finally realized what Silad meant when he said that they failed to become monarchs. No wonder she felt intimidated from the moment she saw the high elves. You guys have already been devoured by the spirits. The moment she said those words, for the first time, real expressions appeared on the faces of the high elves. Devoured? Devoured, you say? Smirk, a cruel smile appeared like that of a person savoring something, and at that moment, their faces, crack, crack, the slender and beautiful bodies of the high elves began to be covered in dry bark. We will devour you. Crack, and the blindfolds they were wearing until now were torn off, revealing the eyes hidden beneath. Instead of useless eyeballs, star pieces were embedded there. 2 highly refined star pieces were shoved in. Even if you're the Shadow Monarch's offspring, you're just a human. You're not the Shadow Monarch himself. Regret setting foot in Elvenwood. Whoosh! At that moment, all the flowers and trees of Elvenwood, which was a paradise on earth, attacked Suho and his party from all directions. Even your father, the Shadow Monarch, will never know what happened here. Chapter 260, Chapter 258. The change happened abruptly. Rumble. This is... The shadow soldiers hunting the spirit birds outside were greatly flustered as the giant dome-shaped barrier covering Elvenwood suddenly turned gray. It seems like something happened to Master. Everyone, return to Master. At Sita's and Qui's shouts, all the soldiers immediately stopped fighting and turned around. But they realized a shocking fact. The rippling, transparent barrier leading into the city repelled them. Its type, previously allowing Suho and his party to pass through just moments ago, changed in an instant. The shadow soldiers' expressions became urgent. This is bad. The barrier. This barrier is rejecting our entry. Break it down by force. Master is in danger inside. Crash! 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 The shadow soldiers tried their best to destroy the barrier, but it wasn't easy. Ripple. No, our attacks aren't working. This giant barrier surrounding the green town seemed to completely separate it from the rest of Earth. The inside and outside, clearly visible before their eyes, were divided into completely different dimensions by a thin membrane. Don't stop attacking. We have to break through somehow. Crash! Bang! Where is Harmakan? Someone called for Harmakan. That's right. This was the time for the shadow demonic spirit to step forward. But Kay answered the soldiers' urgent calls. Harmakan isn't here. He went inside with Master. What? Then we have to wait here and just hope they open the door from the inside? The soldiers were frustrated, but didn't stop attacking the barrier. They couldn't just sit back and do nothing. The purpose of the Shadow Army's existence, their top priority mission, was ensuring Sung Suho's safety. And behind them, swoosh, the spirit birds flew in and attacked from the blind spots. Cackle, cackle, Qui gritted his teeth. Could this have been their strategy from the very beginning? To separate us from Master? If that's the case, we've been completely fooled. To think this barrier was for that purpose. Sita was also frustrated. but thinking about it logically, something was strange. But this is weird. Did they set a trap in advance, knowing we would come here? For what purpose? It didn't make sense. It was purely by chance that Sung Suho, discovered this place. So how could they have set a trap in advance, anticipating their arrival? There's definitely another purpose. The guys living in this city must have created this barrier for a different reason, not for us. Slash! Sita, who tore apart a flock of spirit birds that dared to attack with one hand, soared high into the sky. And with his arms crossed, he took in the entire landscape around the giant barrier spread out below. His eyes narrowed. There's definitely something here. What are you talking about? Kui quickly flapped his wings and flew to Sita's side. Following his gaze downwards, his eyes widened. Having climbed this high, the true landscape, hidden by the lush rainforest, finally came into view. Ah, I see. This whole area was once a city? And he wasn't talking about the green town. Even outside this giant barrier, there were traces of a large settlement that existed in this area. Let's see. Who lived as a Korean before becoming a shadow soldier, recalled the map of the Korean peninsula in his mind, and he figured out roughly where this area was. His eyes widened. It's Kaesong, the place where a large-scale industrial complex used to be. North Korea, a land where everything was destroyed and withered due to numerous dungeon breaks. This rainforest was the result of countless people perishing and plants taking over after their deaths. But there was one strange thing. I don't see any corpses. Yes, I find that strange too. Sita was Siddharth Bashchan, who was active in India's large-scale field-type dungeon during his lifetime, so he had common sense. The corpses lying around in field-type dungeons are usually eaten by magical beasts, but they don't disappear without even a single bone fragment left behind. Monsters aren't that thorough. And they couldn't have all rotted away in just 2 years. The number of North Koreans who died without escaping their country at the time of the cataclysm was estimated to be over 10 million, but it was impossible for all those corpses to disappear without a trace in just 2 years. Maybe they all managed to escape? Of course, there would be awakened survivors. But it's normal for traces of the dead to be scattered everywhere. Even if they became mist burns, they would have at least left ashes. Then that means someone must have collected the corpses, and perhaps those who aren't dead yet. We have something to do for Master. Sita and Quay looked at each other with gleaming eyes. We dragonids will keep hitting the barrier. Then we'll search the ruined industrial complexes. We might find something useful for our master if we look around. Can I trust you with that? Of course. I might look like this, but I used to scout land to make some stardust. If that's the case, then Wait, are you bragging? Then let's switch. Shut up and let's just start. The former villains glared at each other and then simultaneously scattered in opposite directions. It was the so-called contempt for one's kind. Meanwhile, inside the barrier, the world had turned into a thorny jungle. Whoosh! Slash! Sharp spikes sprouted from the dry lawn, attacking Suho and his party. Struggle like insects. Whoosh! 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 Thick, sharp roots rapidly grew branches and, crawling on the ground like snakes, jumped up like coiled springs. There's nowhere to run. At the same time, the high elves also launched attacks. Their white, smooth arms stretched out like tree branches, slashing through the air like whips. Their beautiful, slender fingers turned into sharp, dry branches, scratching the ground. Whoosh! Crash! Slash! Crash! Grotesque attacks from all directions came at them simultaneously. In the center of the onslaught, Suho and his party, suddenly reduced to fish caught in a dense net, responded without hesitation. Suho! Chahayan's eyes flashed blue as she raised the Demon King's longsword. Dodge them! Crackle! Storm of white flames. Thunderbolts rained down from the dry sky, intercepting the thorns that filled their vision. The expressions of the fiercely attacking high elves wavered. This energy? White flames? Even without eyes? No, because they didn't have eyes, there were things they could sense better. The high elves, who plucked out their eyeballs and replaced them with star pieces, recognized the identity of the sword in Chahayan's hand at a glance. Item, Demon King's longsword. Acquisition difficulty. Type, sword. Attack power, flee. A longsword containing the power of the Demon King Baran. The Storm of White Flames effect is activated every time the sword is swung. Effect Storm of White Flames creates an area where lightning strikes endlessly. How? It was truly shocking. Baran should have died a long time ago. Why does a human have a monarch's artifact? Baran was dead, but his symbol, the Storm of White Flames, was wielded by Cha Hae-in. And, the moment she began to move as if dancing, skill sword dance, Storm of White Flames. Whoosh! Hundreds of split lightning bolts covered the surroundings. I got used to this magic power. Cha Hae-in's voice reached Suho. I also practiced how to use the sword. She had many nicknames, but there was one that was particularly famous. Training Addict. Cha Hae-in was once a world-class athlete and then Korea's representative S-rank hunter. While she had nothing to do in the Tomb Berserk Dragons, she did more than enough training to use the Demon King's longsword effectively. I spread the attack wide and shallow and applied a wide-range status effect, so I'll leave the rest to you. Crackle. Conserving magic power was sick when dealing with a large number of enemies. It was an action that also showed consideration for not stealing Suho's experience points. And his eyes, springing forward through his mother's storm-like lightning, blazed with the flames of destruction. Burn. Flare. In an instant, Suho's shadow, which had already swallowed Elvenwood whole, blazed hot. At its center, he sincerely mocked the High Elves. You dried kindling. Whoosh! How dare you! Creatures who defy the will of the spirits. Become our nutrients obediently. Elvenwood, arise. It seemed like the name Elvenwood referred to the huge tree standing tall in the middle of the city. That mountain-like giant tree caused an earthquake, raising its massive roots all at once. Forest laughed maniacally in front of it. How ridiculous! Child of Shadow, we have taken over the bodies of the High Elves. Unless you're at least monarch level, we will never. That's what, Suho grinned, revealing his teeth. I am. Whoosh! Suddenly, a black-red energy swirled from all directions and gathered around Suho. Forrest's expression changed drastically as he witnessed its true nature through the star pieces. Wait, that energy, don't tell me? Yes. No, but how can the Child of Shadow? Well, it just kinda happened, using skill Breath of Destruction. Whoosh! Being surprised by Baron's white flames was just the beginning. The sight of the hellfire, the energy of destruction itself, stretching towards the giant tree Elvenwood in a straight line was a shock and terror beyond comprehension. The horrified High Elves rushed towards Suho, unleashing all their power. Reacting to them, Kamish's wrath in Suho's hands began to move. That technique was the small gift that Yu Jinho gave to Beru before departure. The rune stone that he finally extracted after thoroughly squeezing the large guilds and their wealth for Suho. The skill he learned from it was finally unleashed. Using skill, Slaughter.